We're going to call this meeting to order. Are you ready, Clay? If you would, follow me with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by an invocation by Ted Martin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, Board. Please join me in prayer. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for another beautiful day in the Ozarks. And tonight we invite you into the chambers as we discuss the business of the city and we look at this agenda and go over those items. We pray that all the work tonight will be done to your honor and glory. Father, we thank you tonight also for your love, for your forgiveness, for always pouring into us each day, every day. We also thank you for the city employees, those that represent, especially tonight as we recognize Kevin Jacobs for his work. Thank you for our board and all staff. Father, thanks for the many blessings. We love you. Praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Ted. Madam Clerk, we get a roll call.
Fenton.
Here.
Denham.
Here.
Cooper.
Here.
Milton.
Here.
Rodriguez.
Here.
Howden.
Here.
LeBlanc.
Here.
Your Honor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. This month, we're having the Employee of the Month. Alderman Fenton, will you please present Kevin Jacobs of the Public Works and Engineering Department as the Employee of the Month for May 2022? Is Kevin here?
Kevin, you here?
Come on down.
How you doing? It is my privilege to announce that the City of Branson's Service and Excellence Employee of the Month Award for May 2022 is going to Public Works Maintenance Worker Kevin Jacobs. This award is to recognize employees who have gone above and beyond and whose performance exemplifies the City of Branson's values. Kevin was nominated by several different people for his consistent positive attitude and his motivation to do more than is required of him. He figures out what needs to be done, jumps in where he is needed, even if it isn't his job, and finishes tasks with a good attitude. Seems like Clay would stand to learn from Kevin, right? We'll ask Tina about that.
Wow.
This past winter, he ran a walk-behind snowblower for 12 straight hours, 3 nights in a row, and never complained once. In fact, he always has something positive and uplifting to say. Kevin is a great representative of the City of Branson and exemplifies our values of teamwork, integrity, and excellence. On behalf of the Mayor, Board of Aldermen, City Administrator, and City staff, it is my honor to announce Kevin Jacobs as the City of Branson's May 2022 Service and Excellence Employee of the Month. Congratulations, and keep up the good work.
Yeah.
Kevin, any words of wisdom you'd like to share?
No, it's a privilege and it's an honor. And there's a lot of awful good people working for Branson, as you know. And I feel honored to be, thought of like that by a lot of them and everything.
Kevin, thank you so much. We're proud of you.
Well, thanks.
So Kevin is just one of the examples of the accolades that the mayor and board heard on our last 2 snow events. My phone rang off the hook in my emails complimenting the city for getting the job done, and Kevin, you're a great example of that. Thank you. Okay, we have a proclamation. I have proclaimed May 10th, 2022 as Transformation Day in Branson, Missouri. Over in our convention center right now, actually I think it starts at 6:30, John Maxwell and Tyler Long, they're having a convention. I believe there's about 2,000 area residents attending that. John Maxwell's in from out of town, and so I wanted to acknowledge this proclamation, and they will be reading it also at their convention. Whereas to change the world takes more than good intentions. We need a process and a platform and a movement to transform our families, our communities, and our country. Whereas transformation begins with us, individuals, and it will lead to a changed world. And whereas transformation demonstrates how anyone, anywhere can make a difference, and whereas 700 community members have already participated in the transformation tables, and whereas championing 7 core values to transform our community: initiative, hope, valuing every person, listening, self-worth, integrity, and forgiveness. And whereas these foundational values set the stage for transformation action in our community. Now I therefore, Larry Milton, Mayor of the City of Branson, Missouri, do hereby proclaim May 10th, 2022 as Transformation Day in Branson, Missouri, and encourage all the community to participate in a transformation table. Thank you very much. This is the public comment section of our meeting. At this time, the board will hear citizens who have signed up in the order they were listed. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers tonight?
We have one speaker, Bobby Wydeen.
Pull this down for us short people. Hi, I would like to talk about Bird Road. And I know Bird Road probably is a county road and not a city road. But there's a whole lot of people who live in Branson who have to drive on Bird Road to get to their subdivision, including Cody Fenton and myself. And then it's just a mess. If somebody doesn't get killed on Bird Road from walking to Walmart from the apartment buildings, that's one major thing. We need to do something so it's maybe a little wider or whatever you can do to partner with the county to get that road fixed. There's potholes everywhere. It's getting worse by the day. I actually have come close to hitting somebody at dusk who was walking home from Walmart that had a dark hoodie on with the hood up, dark jeans, dark shoes. The only thing I saw was the white Walmart bag. And it was like, oh my gosh. And then 2 weeks ago, my husband and I were driving home from the grocery store, just minding our own business. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, a tree branch fell and fell right on top of our car, scared the living daylights out of me. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done on Bird Road. And then also, any city employees, where I live on Quail Road, I am within the city limits of Branson. The people across the street are not their county. So when I call, say, oh, you don't live in the city limits? Yes, I do. I pay city taxes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bobby. We have had a meeting with the Taney County Commissioners, and the 2 roads we addressed was Fall Creek Road and Bird Road.
I drive Fall Creek because I work at Head Start, which is off of Fall.
May want some work on that one also. Thank you, Bobby.
That's,
Is that it?
that's all we have.
Thank you. Next is the consent agenda. Are there any items that any member of the audience would like to see moved down from the consent agenda to ask additional questions or have comments?
Mayor, I'd like
Excuse
item,
me. What? This is members of the audience. Do you
oh,
want
I'm
to
sorry.
sit over
I thought you said
there? Sit
Alderman.
over there. Oh,
I got a little jumpy.
okay. Hearing none from the audience. Clay, you're up. Are there any items the board would like moved down?
I'm not in the mood anymore.
Mr. Mayor, I would like item number 7 to be removed from the consent agenda and placed as the first item on the regular agenda.
Madam Clerk, would you please read the items of the consent agenda as amended?
Your Honor, the items on the consent agenda are as follows. Approval of the Board of Aldermen minutes for the April 21st, 2022 study session, April 22nd, 2022 special meeting, and April 26th, 2022 regular meeting. Final reading of Bill Number 6144, an ordinance amending Chapter 2, Section 2-77 of the Branson Municipal Code pertaining to method of voting abstentions. Final reading of Bill Number 6145, an ordinance amending the adopted 2022 budget for the City of Branson to adjust monies in the 76 CID fund Tourism Fund and Capital Projects Fund for the lighting installation segment 3 of West 76 Country Boulevard. Final reading of Bill Number 6146, an ordinance accepting the proposal of Bills Electric Incorporated for West 76 Country Boulevard lighting installation and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 6148, an ordinance authorizing the purchase of cellular services and products from Verizon Wireless and authorizing the mayor to execute the documents related thereto. Final reading of Bill Number 6149, an ordinance to amend PD 98-005, known as Cedar Junction General Store, for the property located at 4017 State Highway 376, Branson, Missouri. Your Honor, that concludes the reading of the consent agenda. The floor is open for a motion approving all items on the consent agenda.
Looking for a oh, wow. We have a motion and a second. Please vote on the consent agenda.
That motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Your Honor, the next item is the final reading of Bill Number 6150, an ordinance to amend and rename PD-96-001, known as Epps Family Development, for the property located at 500 James F. Epps Road, Branson, Missouri. The floor is open for a motion to approve the final reading of Bill Number 6150.
Looking for a motion and a second. And now we'll have a staff report from Michael Woods.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members. Wait for a presentation real quick. Okay, so as you remember last time, we went over the James Epps property. There were a couple asks there. There was one ask that was for the citizens surrounding it for a 25-foot setback. And then there was also some verbiage changes in there. So I'm just going to highlight those few quick changes and see if you have any questions. So moving forward, this is the first red line here. We added "and the Board of Aldermen" in that section. The next section here removes net acre to be just acre, as we had talked about. And then we did some stuff with the masonry wall with the 15-foot rear yard setback, and then we also added 10 feet from the masonry wall to the edge of the property. So it's a little wordy, and we've had some questions about it, so I kind of drew it up so we could get straight together. So you have the building, a 15-foot easement to the wall. The wall is actually the subject of the monument of where the reference is. And then 10 foot to the east gets you to the property line of Branson West, or excuse me, Branson North. So there you see north, south, east, and west. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions or those are the changes that you asked for, and I think we accomplished them.
Wow. Any questions or comments from anybody in the audience? Hearing none, any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, let's vote. This will be for the final reading.
No, we have amendments on this, please.
Oh, Alderman didn't do their, yep, there you go. Jump in there.
You want me to read all those? Let me get my glasses on.
And if I could say, Michael pointed out all these are the motions to match what he pointed out to
Okay.
make those happen.
So I'll go through all of them?
If you would, please.
Okay. Your Honor, I move to amend Bill Number 6150, Exhibit B, Branson Vineyard and Villas PD, as follows. 1, page 4, 1.01 PD plan, the last sentence of the second paragraph to include "and the Board of Aldermen." Number 2, page 6, 1.06 setbacks cabins, 0 lot line patio homes to include measured from masonry wall under rear yard 15 feet. Number 3, page 7, 1.09 buffers and permit screening, the second paragraph to include after the first sentence. However, the buffer requirement on the east property line for parcel 5 is satisfied by construction a 6-foot masonry wall 10 foot east of the property line, which coincides with the west edge of the existing utility easement. The rear yard setback for parcel 5 is then measured from the masonry wall rather than the property line. Number 4, page 11, parcels 3 and 5, residential uses. The last bullet to strike, net from acre. Parcel 7, nightly rental cabins. The last bullet to strike, net from acre. And parcel 8, multi-unit dwelling uses. The last bullet to strike, net from acre. There's my motion.
Thank you. You're not,
So we have the motion second.
we have a motion and a second. So we're ready for any discussion on that amendment, if there's any additional discussion.
Okay. After hearing the amendment changes, is there anybody in the audience who would like to address any of those? Any members of the board? Hearing none, now we can vote
On the amendments.
on the amendment. We could save time if Lisa and I just changed chairs.
That motion carried 6-0. And this is, I'm opening the votes now on the final reading of this item as amended. There's no more discussion? And that item carried on its final reading 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you. And Karen, I just want to say thank you for the size of project you brought in, how you handled it. I think was very professional. It was, and we're just pleased as punch to approve this. Oh, hi there. Welcome to our community. Thank you for coming. Hi.
Your Honor, the next item is the public hearing and first reading of Bill Number 6151, an ordinance approving the annexation of the property located 2200 State Highway 376, Branson, Missouri.
We will now have an open public hearing and begin with a staff report from Michael Woods.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. A petition for annexation has been received from Todd Chandler of CPWG on behalf of Cushman Properties LLC on April 20th. The property is located at 2200 State Highway 376, Branson, Missouri, 65616. The property is approximately 4 acres, more or less, and is currently undeveloped. The proposed use is to incorporate the land with the adjacent parcel, which is owned as entertainment and will be developed for nightly rentals. Staff has reviewed the request and determined the property is continuous with the existing city limits. So here's a picture of the property as of yesterday afternoon. Entrance to that part. These are the new maps. I'm going to take a little bit more time with these to try to point out we went a little bit too fast before. So we're downtown Branson. That's where we are this evening. And we're going to go all the way out to 376. So where I like to know where like Steak and Shake is. So out where Steak and Shake is, or the old Celebration City. A little bit closer view of the actual parcel is a little entrance road right there. This is the outline of the parcel that we're trying to annex in, and this also shows who the owner is. I brought this evening to show you. I've started to try to share with you each part that's in there so everybody understands what we do. So the note cards have gone out, and we've talked about that before, but this evening I brought the newspaper proof so that you could see what a legal description of a piece of parcel like that's advertised in our local paper, and that's on the right side. Also gives all the details to the neighboring communities. Annexation, there's very little in our code with it, but I did include these pieces in there. The property becomes continuous, and that's probably the most important part, is that it's there's a definition for continuous down there in case we need it. I also included staff report, which is something that you haven't done before, but I thought was important. As these annexations go through the process, it goes throughout the whole city, and anybody at any time can make a comment on what they expect. So from engineering comments, we talked about annexation of said properties should abide by all the regulations of the city of Branson, stormwater, infrastructure development, land disturbance, tree preservation, and removal. This part, just so you know, this evening is a part of a larger part of detention. So it's a huge project this is already incorporated in, so they're just trying to align it. City utilities talked about some of the utility easements that would be provided and a timeline for that. They're developing water towers and sewers out there as we speak. This is the aerial with utilities. So as you can see, there's utilities already in the property to the north. There'll be other sections of this as this develops. They have access to the roadway down in the bottom. Current zoning right now, so of course we don't have any zoning out there because it's Taney County. The outline in blue is the piece that we're asking for. The proposed zoning for this will be entertainment to match the other piece of property. Existing land use, it's open, heavily wooded as we saw from the first pictures. Your orthometric views, north, south, east, and west, in case you need them. Annexation request, it's in mixed use, it's 2030, it makes sense. Basically, they're increasing the size of the development and they're trying to round out or square out their development. Staff recommends approval. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have at this time. And the developer is here.
I had a couple of questions. Would you go back to the map outlining the utilities, please? There you go. So the parcel, obviously in purple, is what we're annexing in. The grayed out portion is county, is that correct?
That is correct.
And the treat area is city.
Right.
So it's
So this is all city here, correct? And then county here, and we're just asking for this piece there.
And is that, so is the city going to pay to provide the water and sewer to the property line?
They're going to develop cabins going across it, so that would be their development cost.
Okay. I will now take public comments. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of or opposing this matter? All speakers need to come to the mic. Is there anybody in the audience who wants to address this annexation? Well, the public hearing is now closed. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill number 6151. You guys already? Wow. We have a motion and a second. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak regarding this matter? Anybody from the board?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'd just like to say, from what I've heard about this project, it's exciting. Love that this is moving forward. I think this is really good that we're getting an annex into the city. Dave, appreciate you marching forward with it, buddy.
Thank you, Dave. Any other members of the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carries 6-0. Your Honor, the next item is a resolution approving the disposition of surplus property. The floor is open for a motion adopting this resolution.
We have a motion and a second, and we'll now have a staff report from Jan Fisher.
Mayor, members of the board, the disposition of the surplus property is typically things that have reached the end of their service life, old mowers, trucks, things like that. There's also additional repair items that are obsolete and things like that. Some of these things will be put on Purple Wave for auction, and then some of them will just be scrapped. The proceeds that come from anything with respect to the auction will be put back into the general fund. I'll answer any questions you have and recommend approval.
Anybody in the audience wishing to address this matter? Any members of the board?
Jan, could you give the folks listening like some examples of some of those things that might be?
Well, some of the things, there's going to be like John Deere parts and
Right.
throw-out bearings and
Right.
things like that. Those things will
Scraps.
typically be scrapped. But we've got an old pickup truck with a bad transmission. We've got another vehicle with a cracked block. Those things, they'll put them on Purple Wave. They'll sell them as is, where is, and they'll describe what's wrong with them. And people actually bid on that stuff.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, is that something the city does here in-house? Advertises that and auctions them off, or do y'all use a?
Purple Wave is
Oh,
the
that's the
site.
place.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Clay thought that was a song.
Yeah, I thought Prince did that. That was Rain, wasn't it?
Rain. I saw the list. It's a pretty lengthy list of items. It was in our packet.
Yeah.
So when it goes on Purple Wave, how does our community know if they had an interest in any of those items?
They typically get advertised at that point.
Okay.
That Purple Wave is a fairly well-known site for that kind of thing that people go to and they'll just check it out and say, hey, I want to bid on this, and they'll go after it.
Okay, so the community will be notified. Very nice. Any other aldermen? Please vote.
That motion carries 6-0. Your Honor, the next item is the first reading of Bill Number 6152, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with Arvest Bank for purchase card services and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion approving the first reading of Bill Number 6152.
We have a motion and a second, and we'll get a staff report from Jan. Thank you, Jan.
Mayor, members of the board, the Finance Department in 2021 went out and took a look at the different purchase card offerings that were out there, solicited bids, and came back with this as their proposal. I'll answer whatever questions I can, but most of what I would respond with would be, I'll check into it and report back to you.
But this went out to bid, it was vetted, all that.
Yeah.
Anybody in the audience have any questions regarding this? Any members of the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carries 6-0. Your Honor, the next item is the first reading of Bill Number 6153, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with Central Bank of Branson for banking services and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6153.
We have a motion and a second. We'll get a staff report from Jan.
Mayor, members of the board, this is going to be a similar staff report to what I had prior. The Finance Department last year went out to bid for these services. This is a renewal. We've been using Central Bank for a while now, and there's no cost to the city for these services, and it works out fairly well.
That's ridiculous. We shouldn't have to spend that much money.
I agree.
Any comments or questions from members of the audience? Questions from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carries 6-0. Your Honor, the next item is the first reading of Bill Number 6154, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with Connell Insurance Incorporated for brokerage services for property liability, workers' compensation, and cyber liability insurance coverages, and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6154.
We have a motion and a second. Staff report from Jan.
Mayor, members of the board, this is a renewal for brokerage services for property liability, work comp, and cyber liability. We've been using Connell Insurance for a number of years. They've done really good work for us in that respect. You know, like one time, our experience mod on work comp came in much higher than we expected, and Connell Insurance was able to talk the carrier down on that renewal cost, so saved us some real money. Connell is just right outside of town, easily accessible, provides us excellent service.
Very nice. Any questions from members of the audience? Any questions from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carries 6-0. Your Honor, the next item is the first reading of Bill Number 6155, an ordinance amending the adopted 2022 budget for the City of Branson to adjust monies in the Parks Fund to transfer into the Parks Internal Service Fund to build up for future capital expenses. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6155.
We have a motion and a second. We'll get a staff report from Cindy.
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, Jan is very tall. The Parks Fund for fiscal year 2021 ending balance is estimated to be approximately $433,439 greater than the projected amount. We are recommending transferring the additional $433,439 to the Parks Internal Service Fund to build up future capital expenses and projects. Staff recommends approval of the bill. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Cindy, would you take just a moment and share some of the, just at a high level, share what you'll use these funds for?
Sure. So this will be our third year in a row that we've outperformed our projections. So we're excited about that. That just means we've spent less than we said we were going to spend, and we brought in more. So there's funds there that could be utilized. So it gets transferred to this internal service fund, and that has been a huge help to us, especially the last couple of years when there hasn't been dollars because of the pandemic or different things budgeted in capital projects. So just last year alone, Mayor, we were able to do something like we had to replace an HVAC unit that was out. We were able to replace a old vehicle, was probably one that Jan mentioned that is going up for surplus. We replaced our trash truck. We upgraded our campground Wi-Fi, and we replaced a mower. So those are all things that because we have delayed our capital project for a couple of years, we got behind on some of those things. So the Internal Service Fund is a huge help for us to do that. And I think the same thing is true about Public Works and Utilities. They've developed internal service funds to help with these maintenance type things. And yeah, I think as we continue to build that up, it allows us to have replacement dollars.
I think that's great. And just in summary, last couple of years going through the budget process, we were trying to save nickels everywhere we could. Cindy had a very small capital improvement budget, even though this board is committed to improving our neighborhood parks. And so through Cindy and her team, they brought in more revenue than anticipated. Expenses were less.
Yes.
And this is the, I don't want to say surplus, this is the leftover funds that now she'll put back into the community.
Yes, and anytime there's a project, I mean, it definitely is still vetted through the Finance Committee, it's vetted through this board, and subject to, you know, our procurement standards that we have in the city of Branson. So it isn't just like money we can go spend. It's just money available that if we're not able to budget for capital projects or things that we could in turn turn to, and that's what we did last year with these different projects I mentioned.
Yeah, that's great. Any questions or comments from anybody in the audience? Questions or comments from the board?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Cindy, great job as always. You know, when we talk about these from your department, it seems to be in the hundreds of thousands quite often, you know, and that's just so great. And I would just like to say that, you know, one thing we had kind of discussed in the past, a question I'd asked on the Parks Board is like, this kind of buy you goodwill with the Board of Aldermen as you continue to kind of create these services. And so I would just like to say to my fellow aldermen that as we desire to invest in our Parks Department, I think we should keep this in mind, that it is an absolutely phenomenal department that comes up with surpluses and the investment is well spent. So.
Very well said. Any other alderman?
Cindy, where do you think the majority of that increase come from?
Definitely the campground. But, I mean.
Majority of it?
Well, if you see, there's a quarterly report given to this board, and they do a review of the park fund. And so, as I recall off the top of my head, our pool performed better than expected, our day camp performed better than expected. So some of those things are a result of doing a good job managing dollars, but, you know, we had a good year in 2021. We raised some fees in 2021, and we also, you know, work hard to keep our expenses down. So, you know, we do expect expenses to go up this year because everything's going up with inflation and the cost of labor, but it's good to have those dollars. As the mayor mentioned, we really want to see some improvements in our neighborhood parks. And so if you all haven't been, give a plug in here by Cantwell, we've been really working on that, and so we hope to continue to invest these dollars in those things.
That's awesome. That's impressive.
It really is.
Yeah.
Any other comments from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carried 6-0.
I'd like to request to amend tonight's agenda by removing item number 14 from the agenda. The floor is open for a motion to amend the agenda. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this? I know that, try to make this in a nutshell. Several years ago, the city reached an agreement with the Missouri Housing Authority to remove 2 structures and pave that area to provide parking for their building. And at the time, what was approved with the board was a $175,000 expense. Recently, actually, and that bid came in last year. So I talked to Keith, and my understanding is after we went out and did some boreholes, we found that the rock is closer to the surface than we anticipated, which would require blasting some rock to lower it so we could put in the gravel and the paving. So instead of spending, it's going to cost an extra $100,000 to have this done. What I'm suggesting is we're not postponing, what are we doing? We're removing this item so we can go back to the Housing Authority and get an extension in time, and with that, then look at other alternatives to try to save the taxpayer some dollars, which is the reason this has been removed from the agenda.
That's correct.
Wow. Is there any comments or questions from anybody in the audience? Any questions, comments from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carried 6-0. Your Honor, the next item is the first reading of Bill Number 6157, an ordinance approving the contract with Hofer Welker LLC for the professional design services for Fire Station Number 4, and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion approving the first reading of Bill Number 6157.
We have a motion and a second, and we'll get a staff report from Ted Martin.
Mayor, members of the board, kind of an exciting night tonight
Yes,
for the
it
community.
is.
A request for qualifications was advertised on June 15th, 2021 for the architectural design qualification statements for preliminary design or final design and bid document preparation for a proposed new fire station in Branson known as Fire Station 4 located on Champaign Boulevard. This is an area that we're deficient in our response times to the south. The fire station design is projected at a minimum of 11,000 square feet with a total projected budget of $3.5 million. The fire station will be designed to house up to 6 firefighters, 3 drive-through bays, and a community/training room. We also hope to incorporate a storm shelter that we've used. We've already applied for some grant monies through the finance department to maybe cover some of that cost. The city reviewed 11 RFQs for the project in July. These RFQs were reviewed by a team of city staff who then selected the top 4. Each of these company references were checked by staff, and the findings for the reference checks were presented to the selection committee. The selection committee presented a recommendation to move forward to selecting Hofer Welker to the finance committee on January 27th. Michael Pinkley made the motion to recommend Hofer Welker, seconded by Alderman Fenton, and that motion carried. A contract has been negotiated for basic design services at 8.25% of construction cost, plus additional pre-designed supplemental services. For reference, we're at about the same numbers as with the previous architectural firm pre-COVID. So we're very thankful for that. And you'll see that in Exhibit A, to not exceed an amount of $390,000 for design. Funds have been allocated in the public safety budget with that process. Additionally, grants are being sought for funding for the storm shelter to be housed in the Fire Station 4 location. Staff recommends approval. And I don't do this very often, but would like to request a second read tonight as we hope to have a pre-design meeting starting on Thursday.
Let's see if we can get your first one approved first. I'm just curious, I know that at one time we were talking about the concept of getting it priced with the concrete design versus the stick-built. Are we still pursuing that?
We have made them aware that we'd like to look at all options. We do like the ICF construction, the concrete. Have to look at cost benefit, but right now
Sure.
We've heard some other developers here in town that have built some vacation rental homes that concrete actually came in at a good price. So we have homes up by Station 2 that have been built that way. So it is a very good option to consider.
Very nice. I'd also like to recognize Dick Gass is with us tonight. Dick has been instrumental of getting this fire station built. I've sat in, I can't tell you how many meetings, and Dick Gass has one question. When are we going to start construction on the fire department? We did have a couple years of delay due to COVID. Our budget dropped. But as soon as we went through that, Dick Gass has been championing this. It's been a long time coming for the residents out at Point Royale, and I'm just tickled pink. So the stage right now is you're asking for approval for the design work to be started.
That's
And the
correct.
design work takes forever. So the sooner we can start that, the better off we're all going to be. So the motion in front of us tonight is to approve the $397,000 of design work so they can get started. Is there anybody in the audience have any questions regarding this or comments? Any members of the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
The motion carried on the first reading 6-0.
I'll make a motion. Should I make a motion for a double read? Oh, it's up there. Go ahead, Cody. I don't have my glasses on.
He brings his glasses and then doesn't use them. Just
Hey,
unreal.
closer.
You worry about you.
Your Honor, I move to read Bill number 6157 for its final reading due to the need to move forward with the architecture firm.
We have a motion and a second. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak regarding this matter? The board obviously is wanting to approve this on a second read just for timing so we can get this thing started. No questions from the audience? Any questions from the board?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
very briefly. There's a reason we don't like to do double reads usually. I just wanted to highlight that. It's because, we want to give the citizens kind of their 2 weeks to be able to see we passed something and we didn't. Originally at our first meeting, we were going to have a double read, and boy, I had a lot of heartburn about that, and so we kind of got it taken off. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up, that we will always try to find a way to not do that, but there are special circumstances, so tonight I'll be supporting the double read. So.
Yeah, thank you, Marshall. And I'm in support of it because we've been talking about this for so long, right?
Yeah.
Any other questions from the board?
I think we have a citizen asking.
You want to come up to the microphone, please? You bet.
Did you say the total cost would be 3.5 million?
Correct.
So then, just doing the basic math, you said the draft up plans was gonna be 300 and something thousand, right?
I was hoping I'd get away with my math, but thank you for catching me on that. It is 8.25% for basic design. There's some add-ups that
Sir,
cause
sir.
additional funding,
Go ahead.
and then contingency funding in there. So that brings us up to the total of the $390,000 total. So you're correct, it doesn't add up in 8.5 or 2.5%.
Sorry, my name's Daniel Meenan. I live on
Thank
Fall
you.
Creek.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Daniel.
There are things like Thursday, they'll be doing some borehole drilling on a project that's not in that contract. So those are things that we have to add into that 8.25%.
Okay.
So just to be clear, the number is actually what, 390?
390 total. We don't want to exceed that amount. We should be underneath it, but that will give us cushion. We're trying to save every dollar for the upcoming police station.
There's an over and under going around town if it's going to come in or up above or below that number. But,
Yeah, is that what he's talking
yeah, as soon as we get this, next thing is we're going right to the fire department, right?
Police department.
I'm sorry, police department.
That's my subliminal message he dared me to do.
Is that where he's at?
Any other questions from members of the board?
Thank you.
Hearing none, let's vote. We're voting to have a second read.
That motion carries 6-0.
And Madam Clerk, would you read this for a second read, please?
Your Honor, this is the final reading of Bill Number 6157, an ordinance approving the contract with Hope for Welker LLC for the professional design services for Fire Station Number 4 and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the final reading of Bill Number 6157.
Ted, anything to add to your?
No, thanks for the second read.
Okay. So anybody in the audience wishing to address this, we're approving our opportunity to have a second read. Yes, Dick.
Mr. Mayor, Board of Aldermen, thank you, especially for the second reading. We've been working on this, started out with Chief Sparks. This is how long it's been. Gone through 3 mayors to get this far, and we appreciate you going this far, and I thank all the other people who have helped get the other aldermen, other mayors have really helped us on this. And the fire department people did a heck of a job to get this thing passed, as well as the police department. We had to get, just so you know, just to get it on the ballot, we had to go to Jeff City. I was up there, mayor was up there, chief of police, fire chief. We walked the halls just to get it on the ballot. You probably don't realize that you have to do that. And we had to get our representatives who don't want to vote on a tax. We had to convince them that we should put it on the ballot and leave it up to the voters. That's how that got done. It's taken a long time, and I'm really looking forward to this. As everybody out in that area by Point Royale, we've had a number of fires out there, and it's all due to response time. We've got great firemen, but it takes them a while to get out there while that fire is going. And we're not done with this. I'm going to tell the police chief, I'm sticking with you till we get that one done. Thank you.
Thanks, Dick.
Thank you, Dick.
And just for clarification, that's Dick Gass. That was our speaker, so we know.
Mr. Dick Gass.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the board? I mean, from the audience, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Questions, comments from the board?
Dick, don't leave, Dick.
Too late.
Oh, he's out. Too late.
I just want to say I've had a couple of pretty intense conversations with Dick, and he is he's definitely leaving a thumbprint on Branson with all of the hard work that he's done for this fire station. So you know, that's definitely a legacy to leave, to be able to protect the community, and I just want to honor him for doing all of his hard work. So kudos to Dick.
Yeah, he's been working on this for years.
Yeah.
Former alderman can continue to serve.
Yes.
That's correct. Dick Gass was an alderman.
That's right.
That's right. Any other comments, questions from the board?
He did let me know that too.
Hearing none, let's vote. Marshall?
He's great.
Yeah.
Thank you. That motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Now, Madam Clerk, that vote was to allow us to,
Yeah,
that
your
was the final vote.
That's
Thank you.
final reading. We have
Good.
completed that.
This was a monumental day in the history of Branson. Thank you very much.
Your Honor, the next item is the first reading of Bill Number 6158, an ordinance approving the amendment to the intergovernmental funding agreement between Taney County, Missouri and the City of Branson regarding the city's planned 2021 sewer system improvements projects, Country Bluff, and authorize the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6158.
We have a motion and a second. We'll get a staff report from Kendall.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. On June 14th, 2021, the City of Branson entered into an agreement with Taney County Commission to obtain a portion of the county's half-cent sewer sales tax to be used for Branson's planned 2021 sewer system improvement projects. This funding is provided for multiple projects within Taney County that meet capital improvement criteria as described in the county's sewer sales tax usage guidelines. An extension request for the agreement termination date was originally extended by the board to May 31st, 2022. The Country Bluff project has been delayed due to unforeseen circumstances of retaining a Corps of Engineers permit. With the aforementioned issues currently in progress, Utilities is proceeding with the project listed in the 2021 funding agreement. This amendment will allow time to fully complete the eligible sewer project and be reimbursed for an amount not to exceed $85,000. Taney County has prepared an extension request for the city's approval and signatures. With final approval, the county commission, the agreement termination date will be extended from May 31st, 2022 to December 31st of 2022. A little bit more background information. So we received 2 bids on March 25th of this year. One was Doug's Construction for $90,000. The other was from Bar D Excavation for $296,883. The bid request included a completion requirement date of May 31st, 2022 to match the original expiration date of the sewer sales tax agreement. But with the Corps of Engineer permit needed, we wasn't able to execute a contract before that date. We was not thinking we was going to be able to execute a contract before that date. So in order to be able to utilize the existing bid, tonight's item would have to be approved, as well as an approval of a construction contract with a double read on May 24th. After approval, we could award the contract and then amend the term of the contract through our change order process to a later date in order for the sewer main to be constructed. We were originally on track to bring the construction contract to the board back in April. However, with the discovery of the Corps of Engineer permit, we postponed bringing an item before the board. In conversation with the Corps of Engineer office, our application is at the supervisor level for approval. It's moved pretty quickly to that stage. I did reach out to him, tried to reach out to him Friday and actually today as well, and I have not heard back from them on a more recent update. But with the last conversations I had with them, they are moving that quite quickly compared to what I was originally told of 2 to 3 months. So they've moved it within probably 3 weeks so far. And I do have an exhibit before you tonight as well for talking points of where the sewer main extension is located if needed. Happy to answer any questions.
So Kendall, for clarity, this area right here, this is the sewer extension that we're talking about?
Yes, that is correct.
And this item and the next item address, county approved 85,000 and our bid came in at 90.
Correct.
So we're needing a $5,000 increase. And then the next item is, you're asking for an extension of time to construct it until December 31st of 22.
Yeah, so on tonight's agenda, we have the intergovernmental agreement for item 16. Item 17 would be a budget amendment
Okay,
for the
that goes backwards
90,000.
then.
Yes,
Okay.
and so on the 24th, I was planning on bringing the construction contract as long as these two items were approved tonight. If they're not approved, then I would not bring a construction
Correct.
contract to you guys
Okay.
on the 24th.
Thank you. Anybody in the audience wishing to address this? Hello, Jerry? You need to speak close if you would.
Why not just let this extension, this contract expire at the end of this month, like it's supposed to? Why would I even ask that? Well, this time last year, first of all, my name is Cherry Webster. I live at 118 Country Bluff Drive. I live in the neighborhood adjoining this parcel. My neighbor whose house abuts the creek is also here, the Gears. And I also represent another property owner who's had a lot of impact from this particular development project. But this time last year, on May 25th, that was the second reading of the city's contract with the sewer district that was made by the city on behalf of the developer, Dan Ruda. And at that hearing, Country Bluff residents voiced their concerns, one of which was that it didn't seem reasonable to fund a private developer with taxpayers' monies, especially when the developer had removed a 40-acre forest with a 10-acre permit and then refused to install the detention pond his engineer instructed him to construct. Country Bluff neighbors were impacted by the additional stormwater runoff from the Ruda parcel because the ground cover coefficient had changed dramatically after the tree removal. And because of the 2020 board's postponement of the original annexation, Ruda was enabled to circumvent the city's design standards and criteria for storm drainage requirements. We asked that the board last year not reward such behavior. Between the first reading last March of 2021, and the second reading of May 2021, there was an election. And at that May 25th hearing, Alderman Denham and Alderman Cooper voted no to approving the $85,000 sewer district funding. Here we are now for another vote to benefit that private developer. As Director Powell stated, there have been delays due to no bids, then 2 bids over the anticipated price, and now the Army Corps of Engineer permitting requirement. But now there are also 3 new members to this board, the result of another election. It's unknown how informed these new aldermen are regarding numerous presentations that have been made on behalf of Country Bluff to this board at each hearing since August 2021. So here's an additional aspect that should be considered before this vote. 6 days after the final approving of the zoning by way of annexation plan of intent, I had a conversation with City Attorney Chris Liebeck. On August 17, 2020, I specifically called to get clarification on the term provide as it relates to sewer and water to a property annexed into the city. Attorney Liebeck stated that when development begins, the city is required to provide utilities by, quote, let them, meaning the developer, connect to it. Quote, not that we, the city, actually have to run the line. And 3, quote, just have to provide access, end quote. Nowhere did Liebeck state that the city has to pay for the utility extensions to a developer's property line. So why does the city feel the requirement to use Taney County taxpayers' monies to fund this private development? The original amount that was approved, the original annexation that was approved on May the 12th, 2020, was not an involuntary annexation. It was rather an infamous annexation because it came across as a second annexation. But it wasn't involuntary. An involuntary annexation, it would be logical, or more logical anyway, that the city might want to pay for the city utilities. But this was clearly private development and voluntary. Why would the city spend taxpayers' dollars for a private developer who, after 27 months, still has no project filed with the city for this parcel? Ruda had to relocate the original project to another location in order to keep his original $5 million HUD grant after he filled the forest before the environmental assessment could be completed. Why not let the existing contract expire the 31st of this month? Instead, how about applying for sewer district funding for failing septic and sewer systems already in the city? Why not let the private developer provide his own utility extensions instead of asking for his neighbors to pay for it? With no activity for water extension to the parcel, no pursuit of left turn lanes, no specific site plans, no overall project plans, but instead active measures to sell the subject parcel, here's a question. Why would the city want to use taxpayers' dollars to benefit this private developer? There's no project. At this point, Ruda is trying to sell the parcel with as much value as he can add from outside funding sources. I would ask Alderman Denham and Cooper to vote no again, along with the rest of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Is there anybody in the audience, anybody else in the audience wishing to speak? You know you're limited to two talks per meeting.
Let it out, man, let it out.
Board, Daniel Meenan again, lives down Heatherbrook. She did bring up an interesting point about the existing sewer line. The property still has 2 for sale signs on it. I drive by it occasionally, so I don't know if it does have any future plans listed. If not, then it is being possibly marketed as a future development site for whoever's purchasing it in the future. The other question I did have is the lift station number 40, it's in red. Is that just a technicality of the marker, or is that actually going to be something new?
Kendall, can you answer that?
Yes, so by default, our GIS system labels lift stations as red, so it not to be confused with what the proposed extension would be, which is be to the west side of the property.
And then my only other suggestion is, I know this property's been talked about for at least a year, if not longer. To me, in good faith, I know you had mentioned having to get a permit from the Corps of Engineers. To me, in good faith, that should have been accomplished or known about a lot longer than, a few months ago. So to come up and kind of say, hey, we need to go through the first read and the final read tonight, push this through so we can come up with a construction plan and get that pushed through in the next couple of months, it just seems like things are moving a little too fast. It should have been progressively done, and it's not the first time, I would imagine, a developer has had to have something like this accomplished, so they should know and should have known that, hey, I've got to get this accomplished, this accomplished, this accomplished before I can even push this through. And it sounded like there was several developers that had done things of that nature earlier tonight, so I just wanted to bring that up as a point.
hold on a sec, Daniel. Madam Clerk, do we have a second read on this tonight?
It's just on the floor for the first read tonight.
Yeah, there won't be a,
I
Yeah.
thought he was suggesting first and second.
I heard
sorry.
that too, but, yeah, so tonight is just the first read, and then it'll be second read in 2
Okay.
weeks.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood what he said.
Oh, that's fine. I heard it also when I was looking through my notes, so thank you for bringing that up.
Mayor, I'd like to clarify on that. So the double read would be on the construction contract, which I'd bring to the board on May 24th.
So May 24th, you're bringing a construction contract, asking for a double read for that.
Yes, correct. Because during the bid process, we put in a time constraint of May 31st for the construction to be completed. So we need to get that contract approved and then do a change order to amend the term of the contract, which we're able to do that administratively between our finance department, our public works department, our utilities department, and then it goes to the city administrator for approval to extend the term of the contract. And again, a little bit more on the Corps of Engineer permit. So back in 2020, there was a federal ruling where a Corps permit was not needed for the property next door when they did the clearing. However, in 2021, they revised the rules with the Corps of Engineers and implemented that back into the process again. So there was a flip-flop in the federal government that caused some confusion on our end. So we was basing our assumptions off of that previous situation where a permit was not required when the trees were cleared.
Kendall, thank you for taking the time to explain that. Hello, Mr. Ruda.
Dan Ruda, 110.
Dan, I'm sorry, these mics are odd. They need to be real close to you.
Dan Ruda, 110 Residence Lane. I'm the infamous Dan Ruda. My name's been talked about for the last 2.5 years. I don't know where that I came up. The property is not my name. I'm not the developer. And I'd appreciate it if the Fall Creek representatives would so address it. So the reason I haven't got up, and I guess I'm going to address all the new aldermen too. I assume most of you have heard about it. How could you not? There's been a few things that I've done wrong. I'm not perfect. We are not perfect. Country Bluffs is not perfect. It's a good development. So to kind of straighten some of what has happened, 2.5 years ago we were here. This community talks about workforce housing, affordable housing. All of us heard it 1,000 times, how important it is to our future, and how little we have. Our group put it together, sought out partners that had lots of experience, brought them to town, and we worked on a deal, okay, on a very nice piece of property. And we did that. If everybody thinks, including the Country Bluff folks, that you make a lot of money doing workforce housing, you're wrong. You make a fee to build it, and basically you make no money for 20 years, and at the end of 20 years, the agreement that we had with this project that got moved is that we have to give those people that are renting at that time the rights to ownership. So basically, it's a 20 to 30-year project that it's tied up getting half rents. I'm overstating it, but that's it. And at the money, half rents, if you know anything about residential housing, that's what it costs just to maintain the property. So if you kind of put 30 years on my age, I won't be being wild and crazy probably. I don't think anybody thinks that. So we took an awful good project because we thought we were doing something nice, and our partners that we brought to town are getting almost all the development fee, which is not exorbitant, to do the development because they had the experience and we let them do that. So how we got here, we came down here, we got it approved. Yes, the project was approved in Taney County some 12 years ago. And it was approved with a bigger buffer. And it was approved with, I want to say, something approximating, I didn't go back and look it up, 300 residential units. And guys, I'm going to take a little bit of time. I'll try not to overdo it. But I think most of you know for 2.5 years, Dan Ruda has been dragged through the mud. And I've tried to listen and hope that that would pass, because I understand that it is a neighborhood. I get it. So, but I'll try to go as quickly as I can. 2.5 years ago, we got it. We just came to this committee, this board, and asked for their approval and their recommendation to the state. This project was different because there was government money, that HUD money, that was allocated by the federal government to go to 5 counties in Missouri. Taney County was one from the flood of 2017, from 2017. So that was part of the other enticement, okay? Little did we know at that time, because none of us had ever done that, including our partners, and including, I think this was one of the few times that had been done, because it was a special event, is trying to work with DED of the state and HUD together is 2 large bureaucratic agencies that really don't like each other. So it made it difficult. Anyway, we got started, and yes, I've apologized, I've said I did it, is that in accordance with Taney County zoning and Taney County development standards, you can tear the trees down, okay? I did that. Why did I do it? Because if I bring it into the city, I got to pay the deposit. It was another $100,000, okay? I didn't make the loss, okay? But I was trying to follow them. So yes, they did, because what I also know, if you take a piece of land and if you develop it, the number of trees that live are minimal. When you start messing with the roots around a tree that comes under their shade, 90% of the time they die. So in hindsight, I wished I wouldn't have done it. I've got up, I've already said that, I've told the aldermen that in several meetings, okay? But I did. So I'm living with it. I wish they were there today. So anyway, we got it approved, went up and got it approved by, at DED, started working through it. There is a section, as the Country Bluff folks represented, in there that, we tore the trees down, that there's a paragraph in HUD, which was brought about by the Country Bluff representatives, is that HUD asks that you not disturb the site from the time that it is approved until, or from the time the application is done until it's approved. And the reason for that, the whole reason for that HUD ruling is so that if there's environmental issues there, you don't try to take them out and destroy them, okay? There was no intention for this item to happen, but because of political pressure, they went ahead and, as many of us might have, particularly governmental agencies. So at that time, to save the project, we moved it to a different site, okay? Took 6-8 months. We had to start all over. We scrapped $350,000 of our money. Another greedy developer spent $350,000 on architectural, engineering, and design plans. That went away because we moved it. So we did move it. In that time, as we know, during this past 2 years, guys, costs have gone up tremendously. So instead of, we went back to HUD and said, guys, we can't build the project. We've wasted time. Our fault, your fault. They said, we want the project there. Branson needs workforce housing. You go anywhere in this state, you talk to anybody in government, Branson needs workforce housing. And there's other projects in town, 2 of them in Branson Hills, that aren't workforce housing. They're senior. Which is easier? Which is easier to run? Senior. Workforce is hard, okay? But that's what we were trying to do. So we moved it. Because that money had only been allocated, we went from 38 units to 30, It's under construction. It'll be done by the end of the year, and there will be workforce housing. The next year, in every one of these meetings, the Dan Ruda name got drug up, and I was a dirty, rotten, no good, bad boy. Okay? Some of those things are true. Most of them are not. Okay? There's lots of water running down that holler long before Dan Ruda got there. And today has been talked about with the engineers. 40% of the water that runs down there comes on to me. Okay? It isn't me producing it. And if you go to engineers, grass as opposed to trees is 80 to 90% as effective in stopping runoff. Okay? And it's grassed again. Maybe it wasn't. That's how that works. So the next year, we applied again to take another project back. So we'd moved the one that's getting built today to bring it back to Fall Creek. And went through the process, got it approved here, took it to the state, and they had no idea that we were going to feel as much objection and pushback from a representative at Country Bluffs at the open hearings. So we weren't prepared. And so our project, as well as two others, there's a scoring process, ended up exactly tied. And the decision that was made, okay, was that if Branson doesn't want it, let's don't give it to him. Let's give him somebody else. So it went, and the community lost the project. Okay. So again, we didn't get it. But kind of comes back to that point I heard several times, what's that Ruda doing? He's just trying to sell the property. Kendall and the Rudas and Mike got $3 million sitting in a piece of property that we would have loved and we would have today substantially built out had we started 2 years ago. Not with affordable housing. It would have been a small segment. I think all of us know the last 2.5 years in this community, in the country, has been the best opportunity for developers in the history of America. Better than 2005, 6, and 7. So I guess if there's any consolation to Country Bluffs, I felt your pain. Thank you. Hopefully I've learned my lesson. So again, this last year, we made another application for a different location. And we got the blessing of this committee. Took it to the state. Again, the last 2 years, the applications were totally through DED, wasn't a HUD. Joint venture. Anyway, it's in another location in Center Point, which is a development that we own and built and developed. It's within walking distance to essentially everything. It's a very good location. The infrastructure's all in. I know everybody's all worried about what's about the infrastructure. We built the development and the infrastructure's all in at our money, at our expense. It's sitting there. Anyway, the objections from Country Bluff were there again this year. And fortunately, you slap us around once, we were better prepared and tried to educate the decision makers, and it did get approved. Thank goodness for Branson. So that project will start this summer. Okay? And if you think that the Combses and the Rudas are going to get rich on these projects, guys, just go look at the numbers. Have somebody show them to you and how you exit them. They're long and there's minimal. And if you put the time value of money, it's insignificant. Compared to doing for-profit stuff, which is what I do, what we've done and been very successful, it's nothing. So I'm here to say it's time for this community to go on. There's been some other things that have come up. I've already said, I wished I wouldn't have torn the trees down. It was totally legal. The water, I'm not saying there's not a little more water there, but we all know, everybody knows. She ran over the road and flooded long before those trees were torn down. And so to come back and say, well, Ruda, why do you got a for sale sign? You come and you stick your old head up out of your old groundhog hole and you get beat on it, as has been said, for the last 3 years, and consistently, as was said earlier, every day since August or September of last year, you get to thinking, really, I really want to do that. And every day I get up knowing that I'm not perfect. And you're in the development business, guys, you get mud on the road. It is not a perfect process, but it's necessary. And the people that own this development are good people, and we know what we're doing, and we're well capitalized. I think everybody has an indication of what percentage of developments go broke. The majority do, okay? And that's the worst thing that can happen to a community because it's an eyesore. So that's why it was still there. That's why we're still working on it. So what did we do? Okay? Now, the Combses and the Rudas pay a lot of sales tax too over the years. And that means some county tax and some sewer tax. Okay? So the city, and I understand that, taxes, they're hard. So, with the help of Kendall, we made an application to the county. The Combses and the Rudas did some communicating and selling on the idea that it was necessary and how prudent it was, and got the grant of $85,000, which we thought was going to be enough a year ago. And we're $5,000 short. Okay? Boy, it seems like a pretty nice deal. You can go back in the history of this city and the number of sewer lines we've taken and just given away, going up Bee Creek Road, going out by the dams to the west of Point Royale. If you guys go back and look, those of you that have been with the city for a period of time, we spent some $250,000 to $500,000 hooking up sewer next to where the monkey place is, that little subdivision back there, because it was all septic, and gave it away. So it sure seems to make sense when we got people that have the history of doing good things to try to work with them, particularly if they're going to bring housing. So we are still working on it. So that's why we're still here. That's why we're still trying to work with Kendall and trying to get the sewer. When this whole process started, I've met with all of the that wanted to come, which was most of the Country Bluff neighbors at least twice. I've met with, and there's been several boards at Country Bluff. They don't all stay on the board forever. As in those type of communities, there's a little politics going on there too. It's normal. But I've met with several of the boards on numerous times and have come to many of these meetings. So we want to continue developing it. And in that process, at one of the first meetings, and it's normal, it's positioning, it's jockeying. The pushbacks that were at the original meetings, and I don't think any of the aldermen that are here today were at that meeting. Well, I think were you there, Larry? Yeah. I think Larry was there. Is that at that meeting, one of the several big things came up. One of them was Fall Creek needs to be widened. The Combses and the Rudas went to the county and have been there several times talking to the commissioners and got it approved to be widened. It's going to get done this year. Okay? And it had the ability and still does. And I recommend that Country Bluff forget the grievance they have against our development and me personally and go ahead and have their intersection widened to a turning lane because it's safer. It's going to happen. And what I understand now, I haven't talked to Country Bluff, but in talking with the county, is that it may start just past their entrance. Why? I mean, to show Dan Ruda? It doesn't make any sense. So there's been a lot of those things. And I think that, I guess I'm asking all of you, I don't know a lot of you, or some of you well, but I've tried to be mostly accurate. You know, one of the things that's being asked for tonight, there was their development agreement that was talked about, so that those of you understand, is the way the process works. You know, and developers worry about spending money too, okay? No matter, you know, I can say, no matter if you got as much money as Kendall Combs, nobody likes to spend it before they have to, okay? Including Dan Ruda. And if you did, they usually go broke. So the rules, your rules, okay, which are good rules, you can't rule everything, is you don't build the stormwater until you start the development. Clearing is not the development, okay? And there's some talk about changing the stormwater control systems. And those people that do that, they like to build them to the biggest and best standards, okay? Developers, they don't like that because it costs money and they take up lots of land, very expensive land. And we as a community have to say they're both important because developers don't build if they can't make a profit. And if they got to spend more money on stormwater and taking up land that they can't build something on, all that impacts the formula. But irregardless of that, this community, previous alderman and the mayor, and our team, our architect, our engineers, we talked about trying to resolve it and going ahead and spending the money today that I can't build today. I don't have sewer and water. If Kendall says, Ruta, we're just going to start building, they'll get her there. We'll have $5 or $10 million of buildings there that we can't get a CO and we can't occupy. We've got to have sewer and water. This community's got to have sewer and water. It don't matter if it's Dan Ruta or Mr. Cushman or the developer from Springfield. It doesn't matter. Okay? So we had met with the group. I kind of going on too long. We had met with the group of people that I talked about, and we talked about that the current requirement is to build the retention dam to a 25-year event, meaning that if a big flash rain comes and wherever the runoff is coming from, which as I said, 40% comes from property above our property, so now we're controlling it for our neighbors, okay, at Country Bluff, 40% of it. And we were going to build that to a 25-year event. So city council, those aldermen and the mayor asked us to look at doing something, and maybe the community would participate in it. When you say participate, I've been accused over the last 2.5 years several times that I've been a dirty, rotten scoundrel because I got some subsidies and kickbacks from the city. Most of that, what I heard about, was we got 20 or 30,000, I'm sure Country Bluff can tell me the exact number, of some permits waived on this project when it was planned the first time. But I didn't hear a lot of other stuff that was so lucrative to this development team or the Combses or the Rudas. I didn't hear it. And there has been none. Instead, we have, between our teams, okay, and you go back and look what we've done and developed, and that takes risk. It's hundreds of millions of dollars in this town. And we did it for a profit. Guilty. Thank goodness we did. So anyway, what was agreed to is that we'd try to build a 100-year retention facility. There's two things in retention facilities. The bigger you build them, the more they cost and the more land they take up because you got to push water. We paid a lot of money for the land. So it's two things, okay? Everybody talks about the cost of building it. This development team, we worried about the land that we're giving away because it's expensive, but we agreed to do it. I understand that, I think the mayor and or councilman, I don't know, I wasn't there, went and met with the Country Bluff folks and said, you know, here's what we're going to kind of do. So last week, that development agreement's not been done. They take time. It's I think I'd like to do it, okay, but I don't think I should. Probably something the city ought to do, right? They're busy, I get it. But we, as a team, we've made the commitment to do our part in that and share that with the city. And it's not just a gigantic amount of money for what it's going to do to a 100-year event. Okay? So I guess two things. I'm begging Country Bluff to throw down the gauntlet and let's get on of doing something positive for the community. And if you want me to come and personally apologize, I'll be glad to do it. I can't grow the trees back. We can build a nice development. We can go ahead and start on the retention pond now and get going again. So I'm available for questions if you have any.
If I can, I'm going to just real briefly bring the board up to speed. What Dan said is true. Our code says for Dan to disturb that property and start construction, Dan is responsible to, your team is responsible to build stormwater detention to accommodate a 25-year flood. Okay, that's what the code says. Well, as Dan mentioned, there's a property adjoining Dan's that has a lot of runoff that runs through Dan's property. So from a city perspective, in some of our discussions with Dan, the city said, depending on what the costs are, the city would be willing to pay for half of the stormwater detention area if we can size it large enough to accommodate the other water coming through. That's just a good long-term way of thinking, right? Why build this when you have this uphill issue? So about 7 weeks ago, I went and met with the Country Bluff Homeowners Association, and I presented this proposal to them, and that was 7 weeks ago. I want to say publicly that since that meeting, what's been determined, and we have all the facts, but this is from a layman, in addition, the stormwater that we discussed to build, and Dan's giving up the land, is there is additional runoff on these properties that would not be captured in this stormwater detention basin. So the engineers had to go back, and they're coming up with wings or berms. They're coming up with berms to direct this water into that. Didn't know it at the time, so if I need to apologize for Country Bluff for it taking this long, I was unaware that they discovered about these berms, and so it had to go back to engineering. But the plan today is, what I'm hearing from Dan, they want to develop on this land. Did Dan and his team make mistakes? Absolutely. Dan has been crucified multiple times in public. My starting point is the homeowners at Country Bluff. If I lived there, how would I feel? And I put myself in their shoes. And what I wouldn't want is to have this piece of land scraped, and now I have this, even though there was flooding before, now we have this additional flooding with the erosion. So my goal is to put all of that behind us as much as possible. I know the cost of the sewer went from, in the Taney County is offered $85,000. The price now is coming in at $90,000. So one of these agenda items is addressing the additional cost. I put myself in both shoes. I can tell you that I feel for Dan from an entrepreneur's point of view. I've been a business owner for 40 years. Business owners, business management, I'm just going to tell you, is different than government management. That's the nicest way I could say it. So, putting myself in both shoes, I would like to see this development go forward. I do share the frustration that Country Bluff has had for a couple years. The answer to the biggest issue that Country Bluff has today is this stormwater runoff. I said this at the meeting, and if I'm wrong, Key, somebody correct me. That pipe that goes under the road right now is a 36-inch pipe that goes under the road. When it rains, it is common for the stormwater to come on top of the road. This detention basin that is designed for a 100-year flood is engineered for all of the water to go through the pipe. It will release it at a rate that will go through the pipe and not over the road. Correct? So I think that's a big plus. I see some angst. If you want to come up, let's talk. I see that as a huge plus to control the water from going over the road to go through the stormwater pipe. Did you want to come up? Okay.
Yes, my name is Dolores Gear, and I live at 141 Country Bluff Drive. And when we moved into that area, we're in affordable housing because we could make the house payment. No one's made one payment for us. Our yards are destroyed. The front yard, the side yard, and the backyard is destroyed. There's no yard there. We can't do anything with it. Now, water, we have water coming down that ditch, which is quite often, it comes up to our deck, up on our deck, not on the deck, but up underneath the deck. It's ruined all that area. I just don't understand, I guess, workplace housing. Most of the people, and I believe this with all my heart, will not have vehicles. They live on a real short income. And how are they going to walk? How can they walk from that area to a place to work in Branson? That's ridiculous. It's so long. There's no shoulder. It's weedy. I don't understand why it's happening, because I just think that, I say, we're 90 and 80, and every time we have rain, those ditches fill up. They come in our yard. They've taken the roots of our trees out. We've been having to have trees taken down. The city's not doing it for us. In fact, they want $50 a tree until we plant another one. And the roots are coming out of the ground. We're going to have problem damage to our house. The rainwater comes to our crawl space. And my husband has to crawl into the house and make sure the pump's working. We've been 20 years making payments, and our house is probably worth half what it was. It's not fair. It's not fair to people that have paid taxes in Branson. We all know our taxes are high. And I don't understand how one person can make so many problems. They pluck those trees out and burn them at night, and they weren't supposed to, I don't think, take all those trees out. I mean, they could have left a few for soaking up the water. They start pouring cement slabs. We're going to have a mess.
Dolores, if I could, before you sit down.
Okay.
Hi. Before you sit down, I'm going to address a couple things you brought up.
Okay.
First of all, I've been out there watching the rainwater cross over that street.
That's right.
And down that.
That's our house right there, over
Okay.
the street.
I was out there myself in a rainstorm and watched it. what's being proposed to try to solve part of this problem is, if you can imagine that flow of water that we've all seen when it rains, now the only amount of water that will cross through is what fits in the pipe. There won't be that excess water coming on top of the road,
Okay.
which I think is a huge, big benefit. The part about the creek area that runs through Country Bluff, what I've been told several times is that's not city property. It wouldn't cost, what it was suggested to me was get a bulldozer in there, and I'm told like a couple $1,000s, it's not a bunch, but part of what's causing the backup on your yards is that creek bank with all the trees and debris is backing up the water. Has nothing to do with this property. This property is allowing that water to flow through, but that creek bank, and I think I explained, I think the president of the association, I think he understood what I was saying. Now, I don't want to make it sound real simple, because then I was later informed it'll affect some backyard fencing. So I know fencing will be an issue with that. When the developer removed the trees, my understanding is it was lawful. Should he have done it? He says he wished he wouldn't have done it. I say I really wished he wouldn't have done it. You say you wished he wouldn't have done it. What I'm trying to do is to say we can't put the trees back. Here's a solution to slow the water down that's running through your subdivision.
Through our yard.
Through your yard. It'll slow the water running down through your yard if this is approved. If we can get the storm water detention basin constructed, it will slow the water down running through your yard. I think that's a good thing.
But if you start pouring cement for homes and all this stuff,
Okay, it's designed for that. These engineers, they know what the land is now, nothing there. They do calculations. You have driveways, you have streets, you have sidewalks, you have rooftops. They do the calculations when the development is completely done and all the houses are built and all the rooftops and roads and sidewalks and everything's installed. It's designed to handle the project after it's been fully developed. So this isn't handling something now, and then once they start building, it's going to cause a problem again. The developer was only required to build something to handle what's called a 25-year flood. The city went and said, what if we made it a 50-year flood, and the city would share the cost in that? It really costs Dan a little bit more than that because he's giving up more land to hold a 50-year flood. Then the question came up, how much more would it be to handle a 100-year flood? We've had 100-year floods here. The engineer said, well, I mean, I don't want to say next to nothing, but it was like 6 inches more. 4 inches higher would handle a 100-year flood. So we think we're being reasonable by saying, if we're going to do it, let's do it for a 100-year flood. Saying all that to say your yard and all the properties in Country Bluff, I think, would have much less water than that you guys have ever had since Country Bluff was first developed.
I don't know because I haven't been there the whole time.
Yeah.
So.
Keith, is that a fair statement that I just made? Yeah. So I feel comfortable in saying, as long as you've lived there and all the water you've seen come through, if we can get this done, you will have less water coming through your yard.
And then their neighbor's driveway is almost gutted underneath because of the water. You know what?
After we get this done,
Okay.
it won't do that. I'm trying to say, understand your frustration, understand your anger because of that blankety blank Ruta. Right? I understand that. We can't go back and put in the trees. It's going to keep flooding until we can get this in. It's going to keep flooding if Dan ends up selling the property to somebody else. Whoever comes in to buy this property, we're going to have the exact same concerns. There'll be no different. No different. You're still going to have water going through that we need to stop, which this will stop. I mean, slow down. So I'm just looking at it. I'm just trying to, I have put my shoes in Country Bluff homeowners' shoes for a couple of years. And I've even asked aldermen, how would you feel if you lived in this house, right? We've been there, done that. I'm trying to move forward, be progressive, and authorize. Tonight we're talking about that sewer pipe extension. Well, the sewer pipe extension raises our anger because, gosh darn it, this is something else for this development. And I understand that. Yeah. Who wants to help? For the way you've been treated, right? I mean, that's a emotional, logical perspective. But I'm trying to say this is what we're talking about tonight. When we get this development agreement and we start building this thing, I anticipate you would come back to one of our meetings and say, Mayor, thank you for causing this to happen. There's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Mr. Loris, I have a question.
Can I ask? Oh,
wow.
Go ahead, Ralph.
Before that lot was cleared, did you have flooding by your home like that before?
That was my question.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
But there was flooding, just
There
not
was,
as,
no, there was water in that ditch, but it was not flooded. We
Yeah.
never had a flooding.
It never went over the road before this happened, ever?
We got our engineers.
yes,
say
it did.
I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know, we haven't been there.
Yes, the water has gone on the road before the neighboring property was disturbed.
I think, if I may, can I jump in front of you, Ralph?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that's important to keep in mind is what's happened is not new. Maybe it's to a greater extent from before, but it's not new. This wasn't a new result. And, you know, the thing I've consistently heard, and I think Dan mentioned this, you know, we hear workforce housing, we've all talked about it. I would suggest to you, we don't just have a workforce housing problem, we have a housing problem. I mean, I think across our city, there's just not enough supply for housing. So whether it's affordable housing, whether it's a regular development, my thought is somebody's going to come in there and build. So if this is the solution to this problem, we've got to get, tonight what we're discussing is the sewer extension. Again, whether it's workforce housing or something different, there's got to be sewer there, and we have an opportunity to use this county money to do this. It's just a necessary thing, and I think Kendall even touched on this last year, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, so he may even come back and correct me if I'm wrong, but there was some thought that this extension would eventually allow connection to the other side of the property, so further west, on the other side of Dan's property, that would alleviate some other sewer issues we have with city property. And I think that's important for everybody to know also, is this isn't just that little red piece we see. This is to get it there and then eventually to further extend it to the other side and bring everybody over there online to city sewer. And Kendall, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was the potential to shut down some lift stations and longer term to save the city some money in what we have to do with lift station repairs, et cetera. So this is a piece of that sort of overall goal. It gets sewer to that property. I think bigger picture, we have the opportunity to address this water flooding issue, but then we also have the ability to address what's further west and bring that online to city sewer. And I don't think that's been mentioned. I just thought that was worth bringing up. And
Alderman Fenton, for clarity, the stormwater we're handling for future development. Right. This sewer pipe that we're talking about tonight it won't, it's sized for Dan Ruta's development. It's not designed to help other properties up the hill. Is that correct? Let's hear it from the horse's mouth.
So actually the 8-inch sewer main would handle up to a certain amount of development further west. So we've done some numbers there. The biggest limiting factor we have right now is the existing lift station 40 on the east side of Country Bluff. So we have that existing lift station that has some smaller pumps in it that have to be upsized. Potentially, the force main would have to be either upsized to accommodate for additional flows, or some sort of equalization basin installed in order to make capacity available there.
Okay, so Kendall, if you would, I was told this 8-inch line will accommodate whatever the engineers say, 300 homes, some number, whatever it is.
Okay, so as it exists right now, with the size of the line, so we have a bottleneck. The yellow line that's represented on just east of that red line for the new extension, that 6-inch line in that drainage ditch area is a bottleneck itself. The lift station is a bottleneck as well. So with those two items, we could fit another 270 homes, I believe, of development on the existing system the way it is. Now, if we upsize the 6-inch main, it'll increase those number of homes, and if we upsize the lift station, it'll further increase the number of homes.
Okay, I just wanted everybody to have the facts.
Yeah.
The pipe we're talking about, this 8-inch pipe,
Yeah.
the way it's been engineered, I was in a meeting and it was determined that it would handle, whatever it was, 300 and something homes. And Dan's property is gonna build about 300 homes. So I just want everybody to understand that that pipe isn't designed to handle upflow.
Further west.
Further west, it just handle this. But let's not get
Well,
off the
see, I
topic,
heard-
and let's not get in the weeds, okay? If we can.
Well, I mean, whether it's Dan Root or who it is, I mean,
It doesn't matter.
that's initially going to have to happen.
That's right.
So we can't let, or I would say we can't let whatever we have against Mr. I don't think we should let Mr. Ruta's name determine whether that pipe needs to be there or not. It needs to be there for whoever has that development, correct? Am I wrong?
I believe, I don't know.
I mean, my point is, we shouldn't fight this because he's wanting it, because the next guy's going to need it, or the next guy, right?
Ruth, you were cut off.
Yeah, so,
Ralph.
and kind of more to what Clay's saying, there's going to be progress no matter what,
Yeah.
right? So, there's obviously been past attempts to get to this point that we are tonight, and I guess when speaking with the residents in Country Bluff, I mean, what's taken it so long? Like, why have your people drugged their feet to come to this conclusion, whether it's with the city or on your own as a developer? I mean, when you got that much noise coming at you, I want to find a solution to that problem if I was the developer. And I know you got other projects going and things like that, but this is definitely something that's been white hot on your radar. And, it's just something that needs action. And I think the solution, what the mayor's proposed, I think that's definitely a solution, that stormwater retention. And the combination of the city working with the developer and coming up with, hey, let's not do just a 50-year, let's do the 100-year. Absolutely, let's do that. But what took so long? And I think that's why these people are hurting, because their properties have been damaged. They have not had that kind of flooding before that property was eviscerated, basically. So there has been an impact to those people just in the last 2 years, and they've been screaming for a solution.
That's right.
They have been screaming for a solution. Cherry Webster has been here every single meeting documenting, not necessarily just to drag his name through, she's talking about the problem that was there. What took so long? What took so long? I think that is the question. What took so long? Your name wouldn't be mud if you would have, your developer, come up with a solution. We had a development that went through because they came here with solutions with the neighborhoods next to it. They talked to them. Your communication with this community has not been the greatest. It really hasn't. And and I think that's where we get to this point where people are coming in here concerned about their property value because they've had runoff. So what took so long? I'm glad we got to this solution, Mr. Mayor. You talked about this meeting was a monumental meeting. I think that this part of it's the monumental part of it.
I agree with that.
It really is. And Mr. Ruda, I think, yeah, thank the mayor for helping come to that solution. Because, I mean, it's that important to this community. If you're going to develop this community, what's better than a great neighbor? That's your neighbor right there. I would have solved this problem if it were me a year and a half ago. I'd have done everything I could. I think things would have gone a whole lot smoother for you. But I will say this, in closing on my part, I do appreciate you taking responsibility for what has happened. And you're right, we can't change, we can't go back and put the trees down. But I applaud you for taking responsibility for that. And you know, I look forward for you doing more and more developments in the area. I mean, this is not us, you know, it's just that people have been hurting for so long.
That's right.
And it is emotional for them. It's their investment. It's the, you know, one of the biggest investments in their whole portfolios. And they've been hurting for a long time. And I think tonight is a step in clearing that up. And I think it's a step of becoming good neighbors. I mean, and I hope that this board can help facilitate that. For you, Mr. Ruda, and for every resident in Country Bluff, I hope that we can be a facilitator of making good neighbors of each other for your developers and for the community.
Thank you, Ralph. Marshall?
You know, boy, if the trees were the only issue, right? Every step of the way, and we're not talking about legality of it, okay? Came through on an annexation plan of intent, highly unusual. We had to search for precedent throughout the state to find that. You know, Mr. Mayor, I respect you immensely, you know that. But I just have to push back on this idea that we start fresh. The developer comes 90% of the way and the neighborhood is back on their heels in their last 10%, and then we say find a compromise. It's like they've already been encroached upon so much. You know, Cherry Webster, every time she comes up here, she does say Dan Ruda. But she doesn't do it because this guy stole my lunchbox. She says these are the things, this is the she's trying to show a pattern of what has happened with this development. You know, so that's where I stand. Every step of the way, this development has sort of gotten what they wanted. And for every, to me it's not about Dan Ruda. To me it's about the things that have been done. And to be honest, every single time we've heard a sorry, I've also heard one time there was talk about, oh, the sign is on our property. It sounded kind of like a veiled threat to me. So for every sorry, there's been kind of a moment like that. I will fight for this neighborhood. I will continue to fight for this neighborhood. You know, I've heard before even questions whether Cherry Webster represents the entirety of the neighborhood. You know, if she didn't, then why did the challenger to the incumbent, Ralph here, have a sign in just about every home in that neighborhood? Clearly these people are concerned. If this is going to help, you know, again, talking to Cherry, it's like, okay, now we want a stormwater detention pond. Well, she wants that because the tree issue has already been taken away. The flooding issue has already been taken away. It's like, it's again, they're on their back on their heels continuously. So because I do believe she represents people in the neighborhood, Mr. Mayor. If you'll allow me, I would like to ask her to address only specifically what you were saying, that this could possibly mitigate the flooding. I would like to hear from you one more time, Ms. Webster, if that was okay.
We have continually asked for a buffer and a basin. We haven't asked that Ruta not put anything on that property. We have asked from day one for the buffer and the basin. We did at the very beginning ask him to move the low-income housing project from our property line to the other side. In fact, we also asked him not to put low-income housing in there. We asked him to put senior housing in there, but he didn't want to do that. But it's been all about the buffer and the basin. I listened to Mr. Ruta's woes, his sad song. I have a whole page and more of notes. The only reason that Mr. Ruta has had these woes is because Dan Ruta chose not to apply for a 40-acre permit with the county. Yes, tearing down the trees was lawful, but he did it with a 10-acre permit. What's the difference? The difference is, had he asked for 40 acres, the county would have required a different SWIP, a different stormwater pollution prevention plan that would have included a 4,000 cubic yard sediment basin. And that SWIP requirement finally came into play on March 15th, 2020, over 2 years ago, after the DNR made an unannounced site inspection. That was on day 13 of the 14-day tree removal. Had Mr. Ruta just followed the initial procedures in the county and applied for the correct permit, he would have then had the correct stormwater plan in place. When he started clearing the land, I mean, you can say, well, the stormwater doesn't come in until the development. No, but the sediment basin comes in before the clearing. In fact, if you go through the order of activities in a SWIP, you have to put in the stormwater erosion control measures before you tear down a single tree. Mr. Ruta chose not to do that. Our question is, where's the basin? When is the basin? He says he has a development agreement. Yeah? When's it going to get implemented?
Cherry, excuse me, for clarity, we don't have the development agreement prepared yet. We're in the process of preparing it. Go ahead.
Well, I understand that you've been working behind the scenes on this for months, years, and we greatly appreciate your effort, because the previous mayor and the previous board in 2020 did their very best to keep Mr. Ruta out of the city limits. They postponed the second reading of the annexation not once, but twice, and gave Ruta 3 months in order to tear all the trees down, burn them on site. And so it's not so much the trees are gone, but there's still no sediment basin. There's still no stormwater detention pond. Now, when you came to our POA meeting and presented the drawing, looks great. Thank you, Alderman LeBlanc. What's taken so long? I mean, the plans look great. They were also dated November 2021, and you brought them to our meeting in what, March? Or what's taken so long? It's been 27 months. Why didn't he do the pond? Why didn't he do it at the beginning before he even applied for a 10-acre permit? Why didn't he do it on March 15th, 2020, after his engineer, in response to the DNR's 8 violations of the Missouri Clean Water Act? Why didn't you put it in then? What's taken so long? Your woes are a direct result of your actions. Nobody from Country Bluff has called you a scoundrel. Nobody's called you a name in public, and it certainly wouldn't be scoundrel. That's insignificant. But what we have done is document your words, your actions. We've documented the words and the actions of the city alderman. The words and the actions of the city leadership. And so, yes, if you can get the development agreement in place,
This is ridiculous.
fine. If he's going to build the pond, fine. If he can't take the heat, he can leave the room.
Cherry?
Ms. Webster,
Yeah.
it could be that you've sandbagged him every step along the way, too,
Yeah,
for the
that's-
reason for the delays on this.
I
mean,
cannot, no.
I think it cuts both ways
Hey,
here, if
I
you
can
ask me.
understand, you're wanting to get the sewer line all the way over to the Woodlands. But the thing is, there's so many other issues, like Alderman Howden pointed out. The zoning by annexation plan of intent, you gotta be kidding me. You've got the Woodlands that you can't, you've got the Nevins property between Ruta and the Woodlands.
Yep.
And it is in the county.
Yep.
And he can turn around, or any other developer can turn around and do the same thing.
You
go through the same
understand-
process.
You understand the storm water we're talking about putting in will handle
Yes.
the water from the Nevins property?
Yes, it will.
Okay.
Yes, it
That
will.
was important to us.
It's important to us, too.
That's
And
why it
dis-
was
and-
important
and
to us. It was
despite-
That's right.
And despite Mr. Ruda saying, yeah, there's water coming onto his property, which is making it come onto our property, this business of the grass ground cover versus the trees, I don't think Director Francis would necessarily agree with that. The city elected officials here intentionally kept him in the county so that he wouldn't have to meet your own public improvements document for design criteria and standards.
Cherry, you have a new mayor, a new board.
Yes.
And we want to protect Country Bluff. We think the stormwater is a
We think so, too.
big issue, and we'd like to have that put in. And I would think Country Bluff would say, and that's what I heard at the homeowners meeting, if we can
We
get
want
this
it.
thing put in, I'm sorry?
We do want it, we want it put in.
Yes.
But what's gonna come first? When is he gonna put it in? When? It's been 27 months.
Okay.
What's taking so long? Just
Cherry,
because you have a
it's-
development agreement,
Cherry?
he
I
could
was out-
sell it tomorrow.
I was out there, if he did sell it tomorrow, the stormwater detention has to be in for the next guy.
I agree.
So let's get the darn thing in. What's holding it up? And I don't think I have any responsibility, and if I did, I'll apologize. But since I was out there to the presentation, I had no idea that our engineering department would, as they re-looked at it, they said some of that water won't go into the basin. I didn't know that. So they're talking about now having to go back and add in berms so it does go into the basin.
After that meeting,
Yes.
I called Keith Francis
Okay.
and asked him if he could come on site and look at the property.
Okay.
And I pointed out to him that where Ruta had laid this 105-foot row of riprap, it's about, you changed the graphic on me. But where he laid the 105-foot row of riprap, instead of putting in, I don't know if I know how to use this. Okay. If you look at the lots right here.
Yep.
These are the housing lots right over here. And this berm over here is way past the remaining creek bed. The remaining creek bed is over here. So you've got water up here on the bluff coming down at a 19% slope. It comes right in front of the riprap,
Yeah.
and overflows the basin. So I pointed that out to Keith Francis, that if you're going to put this berm and this basin, basically where the 105-foot row of riprap is, we're still going to be flooded out.
Okay, but are you comfortable that Keith has addressed that and now?
I think if he can do those berms and funnel it in, because it's not just coming from the bluff,
That's
it's also
what's
coming from the pavement.
Excuse me for interrupting, and I don't mean to. But that, what you just addressed, is why it's taken time from the day I was at the meeting 7 weeks ago. That issue was new information.
Mhm.
Thank you for bringing it up. But now, to address that, the engineers needed to go design some berms so they could solve that. So I'm gonna sit here and tell you, I don't think anybody's been dragging their feet from the day I was out there. New information was found.
Not you. It's just Ruda dragging his feet.
Well, I think Ruta's waiting for us to prepare the development agreement.
Ruda is only waiting for you to do this because he's been pressured to doing it.
Whatever
You
the-
said it right, Alderman LeBlanc and Alderman Howden. I have been here since August 21st, stating our case, documenting his words and his actions, trying to get somebody to pay attention to the fact that the developer has refused to be a good developer. He complains about us bad-mouthing him, and all we're doing is documenting his actions. And my question is, you can sign whatever development agreement you want with him, but as of today, there are no permits, there are no planning projects for that property on Citizen Serve. If he's got one, where is it? Because he's never given the city a site plan for the whole 50 acres. He wouldn't give us one. He gave us a couple of aerial renditions, and it looked like he was going to build 500 homes. Well, the sewer extension that Kendall just spoke about is for 274 homes. That doesn't include the 10 acres of neighborhood commercial that he wants to put in there. And when we saw the previous aerial renditions, he was talking about 500 homes in there. He was talking about single-family homes on 4,000 square foot lots, and then all of a sudden, the next version we saw, it was two-story townhomes. Reason he tore down all the trees is because the only thing he's going to put on that property are rooftops and pavement. That's it. He's not planning on putting anything else in there. And so he had to tear it all down. He just didn't want to go through the proper steps and put in the sediment basin to begin with. And then he didn't want to honor the 50-foot undisturbed vegetative buffer. And the city, Lee Beck and Hornicle, wouldn't put that in the annexation, the original voluntary annexation in May. And then they let Ruta's attorneys write the plan of intent annexation in July and August when he came back with this perverted version of section 9434 in the city code. There are more problems than just the detention pond. That section 9434 needs to be greatly expanded, rewritten. It's all of one sentence on annexations.
I couldn't agree more. That absolutely.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Since I asked Cherry to come back up, if I could ask a very short clarifying question of her. Cherry, I say really quickly, first off, I've heard Ruta call you a snake in the grass in these chambers. So the idea that, you're the only, you're casting aspersions, I would ask, what do people think? They say, one of our aldermen said you're sandbagging the project. What is your intent? I mean, in other words, what could be your purpose behind this?
Get the basin and the buffer.
Right. That's all you want. And so my question is, and Mr. Mayor, you talked about it. You said that she brought up a great point. Mr. Mayor, she's been bringing up great points for 2 years. And I know you do. I'm passionate about this. Yes, sir. Every time she's talked about something, as a person who's listened to her, I think, she seems passionate, she seems fiery. Is she correct on all these things? I mean, she talks about him getting denied the MHDC, is that right? And then he confirms it, sitting right there. But he had a reason why and everything. Cherry, you asked us specifically tonight to vote no on this. Mm-hmm. Did you do that because you simply do not, is it a matter of trust? Are you saying that regardless whether this action might help mitigate, are you saying that at the end of the day there is a fear, which I feel is absolutely founded, that if we keep moving it one step forward, then the developer keeps winning every time? Is that the specific reason? And Cherry, I you know that I respect you. I love your wealth of knowledge. But I really would just like a very specific answer on that specific question. Why did you ask us to vote no on this when it seems to me that it could possibly help? Is it a matter of trust?
Oh, it's absolutely a matter of trust. I wouldn't trust that man to do anything. We've listened to his words, we've watched his actions for 2 years, and he may say he's going to sign a development agreement. That's the first I've heard of a development agreement, because he doesn't have any plans. And Hornicle had told us that the development agreement doesn't come about until you submit construction plans or development plans.
This development agreement, my understanding, is strictly addressing this stormwater
But what does he
detention.
get out of it?
I'm sorry?
What does he get out of it? Because he's not going to do anything. He's not going to spend any money unless he gets something out of it.
My speculation, and I shared this with you when I was at the homeowners meeting, I don't know this to be true. My understanding of Dan Ruda, I'm going to speculate that the only reason he has come to the table with this, cooperating with the city, letting the city enhance the size of it, is he's got to have something getting ready to be, that he wants to develop. If he didn't, I know you rolled your eyes.
Yeah, I did.
And it's okay. If he didn't, Cherry, think about this. If he didn't have something that he was ready to construct, the Dan Ruda I know would have not come to the city and said, here's my plan, city pays a difference, let's do this. He wouldn't do that. Nobody, not just Dan, nobody would come to the table and say, please allow me to spend $100,000 and I have no future plans of what else I'm going to do on the property. That just doesn't seem logical to
Well,
me.
he might have a contract on the property dependent upon
But
him
wouldn't it be
getting
great
water
if
and
he
sewer.
did and this got put in? And Keith, and, well, we can't get into this part.
Well, the point I'm trying to
What I was
make
going to
is,
say was, I think the development agreement, I don't know this. I'm looking for my attorney.
he's hiding back
I
there.
don't- Well, we're about to hear from him. I've got to assume that in the development agreement, there's going to be timeframes. I told you and the homeowner association that before that document is signed, I want to come out and visit with your association again and say, here's what we're looking at signing.
Right, and the new designs.
And with the new design,
The updated
right.
designs. Well, I can tell you this, that on last month, April 21st, I talked with the Taney County Roads and Bridge Manager again, Devin Huff, and he told me he hadn't heard anything from Ruda that he, quote, didn't know anything about 200 homes being built, that Ruda is not pursuing any left turn lanes now, and that there's not been any initiation on Ruda's part to pursue the water line extension to his parcel, which Devin has consistently said he's got a bore under the road, and that's a $56,000 bond. He's done nothing for that. Who's going to pay for that? Is the city going to pay for that?
I may be talking at a school and my attorney's eyebrows just raised up. I don't know this, but I thought that one of the benefits of putting in the turn lane, you rolled your eyes again.
I'll let you finish, and then I'll explain it to you.
Was because they'd have to redo the road, and they could put the pipe in then, and then redo the road versus having to bore underneath it.
That was Ruda's suggestion, because it would be cheaper that way. And Devin consistently said, he came to, via Zoom, he spoke at one of our POA meetings last summer, and it was, that is a good road, and he's not cutting it open.
Okay.
So it's going to have to be bored under the road.
Okay.
That's what he keeps insisting.
Sherry, you have every reason in the world to want documentation on moving forward with this, right? Back to Alderman Howden's question.
The basin, if we had the basin, that would eliminate a lot of problems. but an agreement to put in the basin and the basin being there are two totally different things.
I'm with you on that. I'm with you, sister. What the paper says versus actions are different.
Now, we're still not done with the buffer. It was a 50-foot undisturbed vegetative
What I
buffer.
mentioned at the homeowner association meeting was Dan,
It's a no-go. That's what you said at our meeting.
he
No-go.
said he would go 30 feet instead of the required 25. Everything that he, listen, personally, I think there should be a 50-foot buffer because that's what was approved in the county.
It was a decision of record. Is it not
right.
any different from a special use
So
permit?
I'm
Does it
told-
not run with the land?
No. I'm told once it came into the city, you and I are on the same page on this, but once it was annexed into the city, now city code applies. And if you have residential butted up against residential, 15-foot setback is what's required.
Okay, so we listened to Attorney Liebeck stand up there and state on July 28th that the city has to respect the county's zoning. So he had gotten zoning for
I heard the
overnight
same thing.
rentals for the whole 52 acres, and that the city had to respect that zoning, because that's the way it happens in Greene County and the other county up there, I forget.
Christian.
Christian County, with respect to City of Ozark and City of Republic. Well, if you have to respect the county zoning, then why don't you have to respect the condition of the county zoning? The decision of record said that they would approve that zoning based upon an undisturbed 50-foot vegetative buffer. It's gone. It's gone. His contractor left 50 feet, and he said, I'll go back and talk to Ruta. He comes back the next day and he says, nope, Ruta said 30 feet. So my neighbor and I each held on to the end of the tape measure so that he wouldn't come any closer than 30 feet. We didn't know it at the time. It was a year later before we found out about the decision of record, because Hornicle never bothered to get any of the information from the county. And when we met with him, there were several of us from the neighborhood that met with him last August. His statement was, we don't have to honor anything that the county says. Because we asked him if we could get the zoning rescinded and go before the P&Z Commission now, could we ask for that 50-foot buffer? And he says, we don't have to honor anything the county does. And yet Liebeck stood up there and said, oh, we've got to respect the county zoning. You guys don't know your butt from a hole in the ground. The left hand is doing one thing, the right hand is doing the other. And how do we get anything done? The only thing we could get anything done was to either take Liebeck's advice and sue the city and the county and the developer, or come here and make our case before a public forum.
Would you mind if, I would like to hear what Alderman Denham has. She's been so patient. I can't believe she hasn't been pounding on the table. She may or may not have something to say, but my guess is she does. What I'd like to do is listen to Alderman Denham, and you okay with that?
Sure.
Thank you. I just wanted to respond to a couple of things that were mentioned earlier. Mr. Ruda stated it's kind of normal, money was given in the past by the city. No, when that took place, our septic systems were abandoned and federal dollars came through, and they trickled down to the state and the city and the county to the city. So it was federal dollars that were used to put in those. The city did not put the money in, and then the property owner was required to pay for whatever they needed to run on their own property. So city dollars were not used for that. And then also, Ms. Webster mentioned voluntary versus involuntary, and just in case someone here doesn't know the difference, an involuntary annexation is required to go to ballot. You have to vote. And then the city is required within, I think, Kendall, 3 years to provide service, a sewer, water, all that the properties that came in involuntarily, because it's a forced annexation. So voluntary, infrastructure, detention ponds, anything that goes into a developer's project. The normal procedure is the developer pays for that. He includes that in his pricing for his whole project because it's a great thing to be able to develop in the city of Branson. A lot of people want to. So most developers will put those costs into their own project because they know that their return on their investment is going to be a lot more than what they're putting in. And a lot of them do really care about the surrounding properties and want to be able to be good neighbors. I don't see where citizen tax dollars should have to pay for a developer not wanting to pay their own costs. I don't care. I'm not a respecter of persons. I love development. It doesn't matter if it's Ruta, I don't care who it is. We need to develop responsibly and pay for our own development. The Corps of Engineers hasn't signed their permit for a reason. There have been so many bumps along this road because the majority of actions have not taken place according to what is actually required. And then I do understand Cherry's concern about the requirement for the detention pond and is it really going to take place. So, just a thought, because I will not vote yes to use taxpayer dollars to cover up the fiasco. I can't do it. I will always side with our citizens and our property owners and protect our taxes, our tax dollars. So there is going to be an expiration on May 31st and that's why we're here tonight. And there's a lot of questions regarding the developers agreement on a time frame.
Actually, the development agreement isn't what we're discussing. That came up as a part of the bigger picture. The two things on the agenda are the extension of time and approving the extra $5,000, going from $85,000 to $90,000.
Okay.
Is that right? Yeah.
But
So those are the two things we're voting on tonight.
But
Right.
and isn't that a separate issue from what we've discussed the last?
100%
So I don't think our vote on this has anything to do with what
Well,
she's been talking about.
The reason it does is we're voting on the increased money and the extension of time. It leads into Cherry's point. Why would we approve this? She's asking us to vote no. Why would we approve this? Because of all of these reasons.
Mr. Ruda could actually, if he really does feel sorry for what he's done, he could actually make his name look good again if he was to do this on his own without any extra tax dollars. That's my opinion.
Okay.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor?
Yes.
We saw a developer in this chamber tonight who had asked for a TIF before, was denied the TIF, and now is bringing back the project on his own accord. That's all I got to say. You can do this. That's the right way to
Okay.
do it.
Cherry, I'm feeling the need as the mayor to take control over the meeting. I truly, and you know this, I truly appreciate what you have to say and what you've said for a long time. I feel that this board, we have 3 new aldermen. I felt it was healthy to take the time we took for them to hear from Ruta's point of view, for them to hear from your point of view, to help get them up to speed, because we've been talking about this for years, and they're going to be voting on these questions as we move forward, so I thought it was healthy for them to hear it. Saying that, with the 2 issues we're going to be voting on, 85 to 90, extending time, that's what we're being asked to vote. So you're asking us to vote no. Before you respond, when I put myself in your shoes, boy, there's so much bitterness and anger.
Frustration.
Okay, okay, with a capital F, frustration.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I'm with you.
Well, is
But-
the
but here-
development agreement going to have a construction date of this pond?
I believe it will, but here again, tonight, we're not talking about the
I
pond.
realize that. Well, I don't,
I would like, here's my 2 cents. The board's going to vote, but I truly respect your opinion. I'm going to ask you to respond. I've been looking at this very recently as I know the pain and suffering we've been through, Country Bluff has been through to get us to where we are today. In my opinion, the only way we're going to solve the excess water that flows through Country Bluff is to put in the stormwater. I appreciate what Alderman Denham says. If we don't approve this tonight, let's say we all vote no. I'm just thinking of what's the next step. If we vote no on this, and I don't know if this is true or even fair to say, I don't know if that'll have any bearing on trying to continue with the developer agreement to get the stormwater in.
well, one way to look at it is if you vote no, maybe Ruta would figure out, oh gee, maybe I need to go ahead and put that stormwater pond in.
Okay.
Okay,
so-
if you vote yes, then, well, when is it going to go in? Because you cannot trust this man. We've waited 27 months. We watched him circumvent process after process after process. And so why would he not try and circumvent the development agreement you're trying to do with him? You're right, it's a trust issue. It is very much a trust issue.
So I'm giving you
And
the,
if he hadn't left, he might be able to tell you right now whether, what the date is going to be that he's going to put that in. Might be willing to say it publicly in front of everyone. But I guess he couldn't take the heat.
so I'm allowing you to have the last word. After you share what you're saying to this board is you want us to vote no, right?
Well, what if you voted no? What's the worst that could happen? It would expire. You could go back to the sewer district after he puts in the basin and ask not only for the $85,000 or $90,000, but you could go back to the sewer district and ask for the full amount that it's going to take to even upgrade the 6-inch line, because that's going to be at least another $50K, if not twice the $85,000, because that the property owner whose property that 6-inch line runs along was willing to grant a temporary construction easement after Ruta addressed the stormwater issues. Well, he didn't want to do that. He didn't want to do that. So who's going to pay for that extra $85,000? Just assume it's double the amount. Are you going to come back and go back to the sewer authority and say, oh, we didn't ask for enough, now we need another 85 so that we can upgrade the 6-inch line to an 8-inch line? Because you don't have enough, like Kendall says, to do the full 52 acres, nor the Nevins property, nor take 2 lift stations off service in the Woodlands. So there's still going to be another expense. So what's the worst that could happen if you say no? You can go back to them. Instead of this poverty mentality. Well, they've given us $85. We got to take it. We got to take it. We'll take whatever we can get. If you do things that are fair and just and right, God will take care of you. I can tell you that for sure. But if you're going to try and imitate Ruta and be a shrewd businessman, and get whatever you can from outside funding sources so that you don't have to put your nickel up, well, you might not get the kind of results you really want. I don't think the decision should necessarily be placed on me whether or not you vote no.
It's not. The decision is up
But I'll
here.
tell you this: if he can't give you a date on when he's going to put that in, my take is vote no.
Okay.
And if he wants to come back and say, well, I can hurry it up, I can get it in. Would you apply for me again? Because when the city applied on his behalf, last year, the year before last, they had $7 million in their coffers. You only wanted $85,000. I mean, I wouldn't think it would be that difficult to go back and ask for $85,000 or $160,000 now.
Okay. Do you feel like you've had a fair voice tonight?
Yes, sir, I do. I
Good.
appreciate your comments, Alderman LeBlanc, Alderman Howden. I do not appreciate yours, Alderman Fenton.
Well, I don't
Alderman
appreciate
Denham.
being subjected to an hour bass session, so I guess feelings mutual, so thank you.
Alderman Denham, I appreciate your efforts too. And I can understand your point of view of wanting to get the sewer line in so that you can accommodate all the projects. But it's time for this board to step up to the problems that this developer has created. And this is one way you can make a stand, make a statement, be bold. If you want for these kind of developers to continue walking over you, dictating what he wants to do and when he wants to do it, ignoring his engineers, ignoring the established county procedures, it's just going to keep happening until you stand up to him. So
Terry?
you do what you have to do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I really hate to ask this question, but does anybody else have any questions or comments?
Mr. Conlon?
Kendall Combs. I live at 2054 Hillhaven Hollister, so I'm an outsider.
Just a little closer.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Go. Mine'll be pretty short. I just sat here and kind of amazed that this detention basin, if anything, will fix the problems Country Bluff's got. And I'm pretty certain that if this vote no, they're going to still have a problem for several years. So just think about that. That's all I got to say. It could be a real help for them, and they're sitting here fighting it. I don't understand it.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else in the audience have anything they wish to share? Anybody else have anything they want to share? Any members of the board?
Well, I think it took some pretty big cojones for him to get up and say what he said. I mean, he said, "I'm sorry, I did it," and he still got bashed. So that's probably why he left. And and I'm not taking up for either side, but I say kudos to him for getting up and explaining what he said and taking the heat for what he's done. And hey, you like him or not, I mean, he did. That's not easy to do. I've been in positions where I've been wrong and had to get up and publicly apologize. That's not an easy thing to do. So, I mean, that's all I'm saying. So.
Any other comments from the board? I'm sensing you're all ready to vote. Let's vote.
That item failed. Alderman Fenton voted yes. Alderman Denham voted no. Alderman Cooper voted yes. Alderman Rodriguez voted no. Alderman Howden voted no. Alderman LeBlanc voted no. The vote was 2-4.
Thank you. We're going to move on to item 17, and just so you all know, I'm going to ask Madam Clerk to read it. Well, let's follow the procedure. Madam Clerk, anything else on the agenda this evening?
Excuse me?
Item 17. You ready?
Your Honor, the next item is the first reading of Bill Number 6159, an ordinance amending the adopted 2022 budget for the City of Branson to adjust monies for additional expenses in the water sewer fund for the construction of the public sewer main extension for Country Bluff. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6159.
We have a motion and a second. We'll get a short staff report from Kendall.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. With the last item not passing, I don't see any. Can you hear me?
There you go.
There you go. Sorry about that. With the last item being defeated, I can't comfortably move forward with this item, so I would ask that you defeat this one as well, please.
We would remove it from the agenda?
No, we have a motion, a second on the floor, so at this time we would vote.
Yeah.
He's asking you to defeat this.
Okay. Any questions, comments from the audience? The board is recommending to vote this item down. Any questions? No? Any questions from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion fails 0-6. Your Honor, the next
I just wanted to say I appreciate those from Country Bluff that came out this evening. Go ahead.
Your Honor, the next item is appointments. This appointment process is in accordance with the Board and Committee Appointments Procedure for Category 1, appointments made by the mayor with approval by the Board of Aldermen. Mayor, please announce your slate of appointments to be voted on.
The appointment for the Advisory Park Board to fill the unexpired term of Marshall Howden until June 2024 is Roger Hunsaker. The appointment for the Advisory Park Board with terms expiring June 2025 is Scott McCauley and Donald DeHart.
The board will be voting on a slate of appointments. Are there any aldermen requesting an appointment to be pulled from the slate to be voted on individually? Hearing none, the floor is open for a motion to approve the slate of appointments for Category 1 as presented.
We have a motion and a second. I don't think we're asking the members of the audience any questions or comments, but I'm asking the board if they have any discussion on this matter
can.
before we vote. Lisa, do you have a list of names that you're going to pass out to be voted on?
Well, this is for the park board right now, so we have a motion and a second on the floor for the appointments that
that I just made.
that you just
I'm
read.
sorry.
So if there's any discussion on
Any-
that
yeah.
or not, we're ready to
Any members of the audience
vote.
have any questions or comments on the nominations I've made for the park board? Any members of the board have any comments or questions about the nominations I've made? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carried 6-0. Those citizens will be appointed to the park board.
And I would like to say to Roger, Scott, and Donald, thank you very much for serving.
Your Honor, the next item is appointments in accordance with the Board and Committee Appointments Procedure for Category 2, appointments made by the governing body. Since there were the same number of applicants as there were vacancies, the board would be voting on the following applicants as a slate instead of by a ballot. Appointment to the Industrial Development Authority to fill the unexpired term, Mike Booth, until December 2024, Charles Hillis. Appointment to the Industrial Development Authority with the term expiring December 2026, Richard Corby. Appointment to the Board of Adjustment with a term expiring April 2027, Doug Baker. The board will be voting on a slate of appointments. Are there any aldermen requesting an appointment be pulled from the slate to be voted individually? Hearing none, the floor is open for a motion to approve the slate appointment for Category 2 as presented.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any comments from anybody in the audience? Comments or questions? Comments, questions from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carried 6-0.
Again, I want to thank Charles, Richard, and Doug for volunteering your time to serve.
Your Honor, the next item is appointments, and due to the way that Section 2-28 Administrative Supervisory Committees of the Branson Municipal Code is written, there's not an established number of positions on the Finance Committee or the Human Resources Committee. The code states the mayor and the board may appoint citizens to serve on each of the committees. The board and mayor will need to determine the number of positions they would like to have on these committees. The mayor is recommending 3 positions to be filled on the Finance Committee and 2 positions to be filled on the Human Resources Committee. So what we need to start with is determine how many you would like to serve on each committee. So right now, I need a motion for a recommendation on how many the board would like to serve on the Finance Committee and how many on the HR Committee.
I move to fill 3 positions on the Finance Committee and 2 positions on the Human Resource Committee.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion from anybody in the audience? Any questions, comments from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carries 6-0. This appointment process in accordance with the Board and Committee Appointments Procedure or Category 3, appointments made by the mayor and the Board of Aldermen. The mayor and board will be voting on the following applicants, and 3 applicants receiving the most votes will be appointed to the Finance Committee, and 2 applicants receiving the most votes with the appointment to the Human Resources Committee with terms expiring April 2023. The floor is open for a motion to vote by ballot on the following applicants on the Finance Committee and the HR Committee. Finance Committee, Daniel Meenan, Ed Young, Jerry Buckley, Scott Thurkel, Michael Pinkley, Betsy McConnell, Jansen Crane, Rachel Corby, Pamela Yancey. Human Resources Committee, Lane McConnell, Moxie Black, Jansen Crane, Kevin McConnell. Well, that's not very good. Let me fix. Okay, I have a motion, and can I have a second? Somebody second that?
I'll second it.
Thank you. So I have a motion, a second. Now we're just going to open votes to move this to a ballot vote. So if you just approve that for me. Thank you. That motion carried 6-0. So now we're moving on to the ballot vote. So I'll pass these out. What we're on is you'll be choosing 3 for the Finance Committee and 2 for the HR Committee at this time. Three for the Finance Committee, 2 for HR.
In mine.
You don't know we see it?
Yeah, I'm like, they're fixing to read it. That's right.
I didn't know if you knew that.
I'm going to start with the Finance Committee first. Ralph LeBlanc voted for Daniel Meenan, Betsy McConnell, and Pamela Yancey. Marshall Howden voted for Daniel Meenan, Betsy McConnell, and Pamela Yancey. Chuck Rodriguez voted for Daniel Meenan, Ed Young, Betsy McConnell, Larry Milton voted for Ed Young, Betsy McConnell, Pamela Yancey. Clay Cooper voted for Daniel Meenan, Betsy McConnell, and Pamela Yancey. Ruth Denham voted for Daniel Meenan, Ed Young, Betsy McConnell. Cody Fenton voted for Jerry Buckley, Michael Pinkley, and Pamela Yancey. Daniel Meenan has 5 votes, Ed Young has 3 votes, Jerry Buckley 1 vote, Michael Pinkley 1 vote, Betsy McConnell 6 votes, and Pamela Yancey 5 votes. Betsy McConnell has the most votes. Daniel Meenan has another 5 votes, and Pamela Yancey has 5 votes. That would be the top 3 for the Finance Committee. Any questions? For the HR Committee, we have Ralph LeBlanc voting for Moxie Black and Kevin McConnell. Marshall Howden voting for Lane McConnell and Kevin McConnell. Chuck Rodriguez is voting for Jansen Crane and Kevin McConnell. Larry Milton is voting for Lane McConnell and Kevin McConnell. Clay Cooper is voting for Lane McConnell and Kevin McConnell. Ruth Denham is voting for Moxie Black and Kevin McConnell. Cody Fenton is voting for Lane McConnell and Kevin McConnell. Have 4 votes for Lane McConnell, 2 votes for Moxie Black, 1 vote for Jansen Crane, 7 votes for Kevin McConnell. The top votes would be Lane McConnell and Kevin McConnell. If I could ask for a short moment so I could double check my count, I would really appreciate that. I think I'm good, but I would like a moment to double check this, or I will have probably.
So while she's checking that, I would like to say that I'm very impressed that the community, so much participation from the community signing up for these committees. In my opinion, that's what makes a great community, is the community members wanting to participate and be involved with their government. So I will congratulate prematurely Daniel, Betsy, Pamela, Lane, and Kevin. And for those that applied and was not selected, I would strongly encourage you to continue being involved with the city. I know most of the names on here. Many of them have served in the past and served well. I just think it's a feather in our cap to see so many people wanting to participate.
Hey, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Could I say real quickly, I want to say a big congratulations to Daniel. You know, I'm a person who was a younger guy and tried for a long time. You know, Daniel has run for office in the past. He's applied for these boards in the past. I think he even showed tonight, you know, you sat there and you paid good attention, you asked good questions, you know, so congratulations, man. I think you deserve it.
Lisa, are you square?
Attorney Meadows is checking me.
Okay.
Thank you. Those have been confirmed. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we're needing a motion and a second to approve these?
No, they're done. We're good. Thank you. Thank you.
So are we down to reports?
Yes,
Good,
Your Honor.
because I've been waiting to take a potty break and just get this done.
That was going to happen 2 hours ago.
Yeah. So we'll go through our reports. Alderman Fenton?
The only thing I got to report is I had the opportunity, along with a few others, to attend the employee luncheon last week and help serve food, and it was quite an honor, and appreciate everybody that showed up, and for the folks, Cheryl, and the rest of your group that helped put that on. Really appreciate it, and appreciate the opportunity to give back to our city staff and show appreciation for what you guys do for us. So thank you.
Alderman Denham?
Thank you very much. I also had the privilege of serving the employees, fantastic employees at this city, and thank you so much for letting us be a part of your get-together. We had fun doing it. Also, I just wanted to say I was invited to Open for Business today, and it was a wonderful meeting. I believe that everyone left the meeting feeling that they had been listened to, had great suggestions, and I know I'm going to move forward with the applicant. What they would have been doing is getting spot zoning. However, I couldn't support that, so I'm working with them to work with some other property owners so that some changes can be made, and hopefully it'll be beneficial for all. So thank you for including me.
Great, thank you for doing that, Ruth. Alderman Cooper?
Well, I think Marshall is going to be speaking on this as well, but I just wanted to touch on the loss of Mickey Gilly, who I've known for 3 decades as a friend. We've recorded together, done shows together, and it's a great loss. Not only nationwide a legend, but for what he's done for this town and the status that he brought and the names that he brought to this town because of him, it's unbelievable what he's done for this town. And for me personally, he performed at my theater for a few years when Marshall's granddaddy, Mel, was sick. I called Mickey, and him and Johnny came over and did shows for a couple of years, and great loss. I talked to him, about 10 days ago, and he was having some trouble and said he was going to the hospital to get checked out, and he just did his last show on April 24th. He went out doing what he loved, you know what I mean? He was doing shows and loving what he was doing, and anyhow, I just wanted to say we're going to miss him. They haven't announced his memorial service yet, but it is, I've talked to his wife, and it is coming up. I don't want to say anything because I don't know if they want it public yet, but it's a great loss. The other thing, sorry, I've talked about this, about the issue with shows and producers and theaters coming into town and going out of business and leaving people high and dry. Well, that's recently happened. I talked about this with Mayor Presley when she was in office quite some time back, and it didn't get any traction. But putting up bonds is not an uncommon thing for contractor. I think it happens all the time. You put up bonds, right? That's a pretty common practice. My suggestion to Mayor Presley at the time, and I think I brought this up at a meeting some time back, is, and the reason I'm bringing this up, there's a show that Ruth attended, the Buddy Holly hologram, or whatever it's called. Well, they haven't been getting paid. The musicians haven't been paid, the front of house hadn't been paid, Yakov got stiffed, vendors, print companies, billboard companies, brochure companies, distribution companies. You know, these guys come in here and bring in a certain amount of money, and they do shows, and then these musicians get stiffed for $1,500, $2,000 a piece, times 7 or 8 musicians and all the front of house people, and they're up and gone. And here's all these people that put all this work in to make something successful, and they're gone. And here's these guys that didn't get paid, and it's happened. I don't even know how many times. I mean, this has been happening for. I've been here 36 years. I could name 20, 30, 40 of them. I don't understand why we can't have some kind of ordinance or code or something that says if you're putting in a show or a theater or something to get a city business license, here's the bond. And I don't know what that amount is. I mean, it's for discussion. Maybe it's $50,000, maybe it's $75,000, maybe it's $30,000, I don't know. But then when this happens and that owner or that show producer doesn't pay you for 3 or 4 weeks and packs up and leaves, these people that are getting stiff can come and get paid out of this bond. You know what I mean? I mean, is that far-fetched for a discussion, or does it make sense or anything? I mean,
Lisa, I think you would have a lot of support from this board, so if you would you schedule something on this topic? Because that is a big black eye for our community.
And Mayor, and that's the thing too. It's been said all, you know, when you look at the Facebook feed from these musicians that's posted, and I've talked to several of them, oh, here we go again. You know, that's just Branson. You know, I've seen this happen so many times in this town. And then the word gets out to other musicians in Nashville and Myrtle Beach and Pigeon Forge. We don't go to Branson, man. You get stiff. You do 3 or 4 weeks show and you don't get paid. That's the vibe that it sends out, and it deters people from coming here, great musicians and singers, because that's the stigma. If you go to Branson, you know, beware, you may not get paid. So I would love to see, thank you, Mayor, I'd love to see that get on a study session or some type of something that, some way to protect not just the musicians, which, I mean, that's dear to my heart, because I've been in their shoes starting out a couple of times. But to the distribution companies and the billboard and the print companies and the box office lady and the ushers and all those people that put in all these hours of work to make something successful for this LLC or whatever they are, and for nothing. So that's my report.
Alderman Cooper, thank you for bringing that up. That's a very worthy goal for this board to consider. Alderman Chuck?
Just real quick,
Just be closer.
we have a lot going on right now with the city. I just wanted to see if you guys were up for having 2 study sessions a month going forward. We have a lot to talk about, and we want it out in the public, and I think it would help out a lot.
If the attorney is not listening, I would ask, is there a consensus? There he is. Maybe a nod of the head of maybe.
He wants to know what the question is.
2 study sessions a month so we can knock out some of our big projects?
At least for right now.
There is no limit on what you can do.
You okay with that, Cody?
Sure.
So,
Well,
Well, I mean, I'm just wondering, I mean, if there's a topic, I mean, okay. Well, I mean, if we have enough to fill, then I'm for it, yeah.
Thank you for that. Anything else, Chuck?
That's it.
Marshall?
I have some prepared remarks about Mickey Gilley, but I want to say real quick, Clay, I spent 6 hours on the phone talking about that issue yesterday, and we'll talk about it in the study session, you know, and I'm so understanding where you're coming from 100%. The bond, it's just scary a little bit because I've always been an advocate for our small shows, you know what I mean? And I don't want somebody to come in and not have to do that. And,
But here's the thing, Marshall.
Yeah.
If you-
We can talk about this during a study session.
I just wanted to say, Mr. Mayor, and let's talk, buddy, for sure. I would like to discuss in that study session all the different ways we could possibly address it. Yeah. Now. All right. So as Clay said, we lost a very special individual in our community last week. In some ways, the last of a generation. Mickey Leroy Gilly was his name, and he came to us from Natchez, Mississippi. Some people don't know that he was actually first cousins to rock legend Jerry Lee Lewis and evangelist Jimmy Swaggart. Now, Mickey would joke that his preacher cousin made more money than all of them. But Mickey made his biggest impact in Branson. Legends like Mickey Gilly lived multiple lives, and in his first life, he ran Gilly's Club in Pasadena, Texas, which would go on to be immortalized in the John Travolta film Urban Cowboy. But around the time of this town's boom, Mickey came to Branson. To make it in this town, you had to become part of this town. You had to live here. You had to know the people. And Mickey did that. In fact, I say that he was the last of a generation because even after my grandpa, Roy Clark, and all the others left us, Mickey was still here. You know, he had a serious accident a few years back, and it left him unable to play the piano that made him famous. But he was able to focus on his voice. And I can confidently say that when I last saw him a few months ago, he sounded better than ever. That's because the greatest of the greats don't ever quit. God simply says, "Well done," and brings him home. Over the past year, the mayor and I have worked on a project to name holidays in honor of our stars, and rightfully so. I'm happy to report that a previous administration already did this for Mickey Gilly. So his day is on December 2nd, and let's make sure that we honor him on that day. But there will never be a day where his legacy is forgotten in Branson. God bless this great friend, iconic entertainer, and Branson legend. Thank you. And I'll ask that we stand one last time for Mickey Gilly. Thank you.
Thank you, Marshall. Ralph?
Well, it's kind of odd that I would have some connection to Mickey Gilly, but I was born in Pasadena, Texas, and I actually lived in Pasadena when they filmed Urban Cowboy. And so when I posted on my Facebook, as you know, the last of the OG Urban Cowboys, you know, rest in peace, because I remember those days. I remember looking out my bedroom window on the second floor of the apartment complex and seeing John Travolta and Mickey Gilly like literally 25, 30 yards from me. And as a kid, that was, you know, pretty awe-inspiring. And to think that, gosh, so many years later, here I am living in the same town as him, actually having interactions with him on a personal level in his dressing room and things like that, which, you know, I was probably a little more wide-eyed as a kid than I was as an adult, but I really appreciated him for his voice and his music, and as I do all these entertainers, because I know it's a tough job. But what's really tough is, seems like it's been tough being a resident in Branson, Missouri the last couple of years. And, you know, I talked about compassion and passion as I was, you know, going through the election and things like that. And why passion? Because, you know, without passion, you know, what causes do we have? What causes can we stand for? What gives us the courage to stand up at that microphone and really lay out a case for, you know, what's not being seen or what's being avoided. But the compassion, you know, moving forward is the thing that I think is going to allow for the healing to happen within our community. I think that's very important. And as I mentioned, you know, when talking about the water retention issue and that particular solution that the mayor found, you know, I really look at that as, you know, an opportunity for these neighbors to heal. Now, obviously, people's feet need to be held to the fire, and, you know, I would hope that Country Bluff would continue to do that. But rest assured that I feel like our board is looking at Branson with the best eyes that we've ever had in quite some time. Very optimistic. I get around a lot in the community. I was not fortunate enough to be at the employee appreciation luncheon and help them serve. However, I did miss you guys because I really wanted to be there, but something took me away. But I will tell you, I hear a lot of residents in the community very optimistic about what's happening. I know for a lot of people it might seem a little different, but I think it's a breath of fresh air for a lot of people. And I think the employees of Branson are starting to feel a level of appreciation that they haven't in quite a while. So I would encourage not only the board, the mayor, but all of the city administration to continue that word, that we have our best days ahead of us, and we are optimistically looking forward to the great things that we can all do together collectively as we start to reorganize and move forward with, I would say, with the spirit of enthusiasm, because we all know that when we ask, miracles do occur. Thank you.
Wow. If you would replay what he just said, that's what's coming out of my mouth. Ralph, that was very well said, and I share those exact same feelings. I too appreciated being able to serve our employees. We have another day coming up where we have another opportunity to serve. Alderman Chuck filled your shoes. He had a spoon of lettuce in one hand and a spoon with onions in the other. I too am proud of all the employees here at in our city. I've had the opportunity to speak to several, and my goal is there's so many it'll take me a while to get to all. But I appreciate the support and everybody rallying behind each other as we go through this transition. I do believe the brighter days are ahead of us. I can share with you that from a community standpoint, this board is getting quite a lot of support from our community, which I'm very proud of. And I just realized I'm supposed to go last, and I skipped my city administrator, Lisa. I looked over at her twice, and I was wondering why she was giving me those eyes. So I am done with my report. However, we get to listen to Lisa. Do you have any comments, Lisa?
Thank you. Yes, I do. Well, I wanted to say also thank you for serving the employees. And I want to thank the Special Events Committee because they just take their time off from their regular trying to get their day work done and do these activities for the employees. So we as employees appreciate all their hard work. A great day happened also here. We have all the utility lines underground now along Highway 76 in the first phase. And Keith informed me that the poles will be coming down here this week in the near future too. So that is a great success story and the beautification for our city. And we should be very proud of that. It took a lot of work. So. I did want to announce on the May 19th study session, we will be starting our discussion from Director Fisher on how we will go through the process of filling some of the senior leadership roles. He's working hard on that for that presentation, and we'll take the lead in guiding the board through that process as you will run through the transition, as you said, and we will make it through it, and we will have those roles refilled. And there's some options, and the board can consider the options on how they would like to proceed. And Jan, I know Director Fisher is working very hard to get that done. As for the additional study session, thank you for bringing that up. We have had second study sessions in the past, so that's something that we can reinvent. The one thing I will ask that we will send out to make sure your calendars are good for a certain date that we try to do a regular time. So I would like to check calendars on that. No set time. The only set time is this board meeting is required by code, so all the other dates are open dates. Remember, we have HR committees coming up and finance committees starting back up and a study session and now adding another study session. I just want to be aware of your personal calendars, your work calendars, to make sure we can fit them all in. And they can be adjusted, so we just would like that feedback. And I thank you, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Lisa. Probably need a motion to adjourn. How do we do it up there? Everybody shut down their computers. Probably do a verbal. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any questions or comments from the audience? Questions, comments from the board? All in favor, let's vote.
That motion carries 6-0. Thank you.
Any no votes on that one will be sent to the principal's office. Thank you.